Chapter 960. Instantly the mystic courtyard fell silent. When they saw that, everyone's mouths were agape with conflicted expressions and they could not calm down for a long time. Dead. The number one of the phenomenon ranking, the number one perfected lord of the middle continent and one of the twin paragons of chaos essence sect, Yi Tiancheng, died in front of everyone just like that. In addition to being shocked, the crowd also sighed with emotion. This was the cultivation world. So what if he was a paragon? So what if he was a monster incarnate? Without standing at the peak of Tianhuang mainland, there was still the danger of being killed. Paragons that died prematurely would eventually be forgotten. It wouldn't take long. In 100 years, not many people would still remember Yi Tiancheng. He was way too young. He rose like a comet and only made a name for himself for a few decades. To think that he would meet an even more terrifying monster incarnate and end up with such an outcome. Everyone knew that Yi Tiancheng had only himself to blame for his death. His motive for proposing marriage was to force little fatty Ji Chengtian, Shi Jian and the other old friends of Su Zimo to appear so that he could kill them one by one. However, Yi Tiancheng did not expect that he would attract a dragon instead of a snake out of its hole. Jian Wuzong looked at the seemingly frail green-robed cultivator in the center of the battlefield with a look of fear in his eyes. It was only at this moment that he truly understood the reason why Hang Qiuyu did not dare to draw his sword against this person. He recalled that he had attacked this person twice and felt a sense of trepidation. If one were to say that this person was decisive and showed off his ability, no one would object. Even a monster incarnate like Yi Tiancheng with such a background, identity, status and fame was killed by this person just like that. There was no hesitation at all. However, Jian Wuzong refused to believe that this person was bloodthirsty. That was because he was still alive. He had attacked this person twice and yet he was still alive. Arikatsuki Michinoku's expression turned terrible. She had not expected that Su Zimo would kill Yi Tiancheng here without giving her any face. The cultivation world is going to experience a bloodbath with his return. Is he declaring war on Di'in? Di'in has already stepped into the void reversion realm. Although this person's combat strength is strong, he is a major realm lower than Di'in. Isn't he a little too arrogant? Sounds of discussion could be heard from the crowd. No matter what, the title of the number one perfected cultivator shouldn't be a problem. That's right. I'm afraid that only this person has the qualifications to drink the last cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. Whoosh! A beam of cold light pierced through the air and pierced the back of Su Zimo's head, arriving in an instant. Just as everyone was discussing, someone in the crowd suddenly attacked without any warning. When this cold light was about to pierce Su Zimo's head, a voice was heard. If you want to drink the best quality mystic tea, you have to ask me. Attack first and speak later. This was a complete sneak attack. Furthermore, that person's dermic powers were frightening and 6 dermic patterns shone on his flying sword. It was a connate perfected lord dermic weapon with shocking lethality. He did not hold back at all with this sword strike. Whoosh! Under everyone's gaze, the flying sword pierced through Su Zimo's head. However, there was no splatter of blood. The cultivators focused their gazes. The Su Zimo that was penetrated by the flying sword was gradually dissipating into nothingness. As for the real Su Zimo, he had already dodged to the side. Because he was too fast, the only thing left on the spot was an afterimage of him. If it was anyone else, they might not have been able to dodge that sword strike. However, Su Zimo possessed spirit perception and was unpredictable. The moment the flying sword was released, he had already dodged it. The flying sword spun in midair and transformed into a streak of light that returned to a cultivator of Heavenly Dipper sect. The person who attacked was Perfected Lord Pang Lan. Do you have a death wish? Su Zimo glared at Perfected Lord Pang Lan coldly. Fufu. Perfected Lord Pang Lan smiled gently. Yi Tiancheng is merely a brat who's still wet behind the ears. I don't take him seriously at all. Do you think that you're the number one perfected lord just because you killed Yi Tiancheng? Su Zimo no longer wanted to listen to Perfected Lord Panglan's nonsense and walked straight towards him. A shuddering malevolent aura surged over. Perfected Lord Panglan felt as though he was not facing a cultivator, but an ancient demon whose hands were stained with endless blood. His heart skipped a beat. No matter what, the melee combat strength displayed by Su Zimo just now was still terrifying. He could not let the latter get close to him. "You're the one who has a death wish," Perfected Lord Panglan roared, and his glabella shone, releasing an incomparably domineering power. His spirit consciousness surged and arrived. It was a spirit consciousness attack. This was an ability that cultivators possessed when they cultivated to the void reversion realm, and their essence spirits improved and became more condensed, allowing them to leave their bodies and roam the world spiritually. Normally speaking, void reversions could crush nascent souls. Apart from the exponential increase in dermic powers, spirit consciousness attacks were also the most direct method that void reversions could use to suppress nascent souls. Not every void reversion knew of essence spirit secret skills. However, every void reversion could release spirit consciousness attacks. The crowd was in an uproar when they sensed the power fluctuation. Perfected Lord Panglan is able to release a spirit consciousness attack at perfected nascent soul realm. No wonder he doesn't take Yi Tianqing seriously. So that's his greatest trump card. No matter how terrifying Su Zimo's physique is or how strong he is in melee combat, he won't be able to defend against a spirit consciousness attack. As expected of the number one of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago, he saw through Su Zimo's weakness with a single glance. Su Zimo is finished. Perfected Lord Panglan was excited when he heard the discussions around him. Yi Tianqing? Su Zimo? From today onwards, they would all be his stepping stones. That's your trump card? Right then, Su Zimo's voice sounded calmly. Suddenly, Perfected Lord Panglan felt uneasy. He could not see any panic or fear in Su Zimo's eyes. There was only calmness with a hint of mockery. Spirit consciousness attack? Su Zimo smirked and said slowly, "I know how to do that too." The moment he said that, his consciousness surged. The black-haired essence spirit stood in midair, and his black hair danced as his body shone with crackling lightning. Sanskrit echoed in his consciousness. It was vast and sacred and lasted for a long time. The Purple Thunder Manual and Great Day Rulai Sutra were both top-tier cultivation techniques of the immortal and Buddhist sects, and were pushed to their limits. An even more terrifying spirit consciousness burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella and collided against Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness attack. Boom! The two divine consciousnesses collided together, erupting with an earth-shattering bang. A series of ripples appeared in the void and surged in all directions, knocking the cultivators at the front to the ground. Perfected Lord Panglan's eyes were filled with endless shock, and he was dumbfounded. He had not expected Su Zimo to be able to release a spirit consciousness attack as well. Furthermore, it was even more ferocious and terrifying than his spirit consciousness attack. Before long, Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness was shattered and dissipated instantly. The remnant spirit consciousness surged into Perfected Lord Panglan's consciousness. Chapter 961. Ah! Perfected Lord Panglan shuddered and cried out in pain. He hugged his head with both hands and curled his body, as though he was enduring immense pain. The crowd was in an uproar. If Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness attack was said to have shocked everyone, Su Zimo's counterattack was enough to shock everyone. Perfected Lord Panglan had cultivated for hundreds of years, and was half a step into the void reversion realm. It was only logical that he could cultivate to this point. Su Zimo was only slightly more than 100 years old and was at late-stage nascent soul. How could his essence spirit be so terrifying? It was even condensed to the point where he could release spirit consciousness attacks. What was even more frightening was that Perfected Lord Panglan was clearly defeated in the spirit consciousness clash. In reality, when Su Zimo first entered the nascent soul realm, his two essence spirits could already release spirit consciousness attacks after fusing. By the time he cultivated to late-stage nascent soul, his two essence spirits were already condensed and pure enough without the need to fuse. The black-haired essence spirit cultivated two top-tier immortal and Buddhist spirit refinement cultivation techniques. Not only that, it was also nourished by Qinglian of creation. In Su Zimo's opinion, it was only normal that his spirit consciousness attack could crush Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness. Perfected Lord Panglan had a splitting headache and wounds had already appeared on his essence spirit. Essence spirit injuries were the hardest to heal. Suddenly, a strong sense of regret surged in his heart. He struggled to get to his feet. Unfortunately, Su Zimo would not give him another chance. After the spirit consciousness attack, Su Zimo's figure flashed and arrived before perfected Lord Panglan in the blink of an eye. He extended his finger and tapped the latter's glabella gently. Poof! A bloody hole appeared on perfected Lord Panglan's glabella. His essence spirit was completely destroyed. Another monster incarnate was dead. The number one of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago, who was half a step into the void reversion realm, died in front of everyone just like that. He died even faster than Yi Tiancheng. That was the danger of a spirit consciousness clash. Even if his primordial spirit hadn't been destroyed in the first instant, it would still have been jolted by the impact. If he hadn't been able to react in time, he might have been killed by the other party. Therefore, under most circumstances, it was rare for cultivators to use spirit consciousness attacks or essence spirit secret skills right from the start in a fight. This was equivalent to deciding life and death in an instant. No one had the confidence to win. Not to mention that even if he won, if his soul core suffered an injury, then it would leave behind boundless calamity, and the losses outweighed the gains. Two paragons, Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Panglan, the former number one of the phenomenon ranking, died one after another. Suddenly, the mystic courtyard was filled with a strange killing intent. The gazes of the void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and Hellfire Hall met. The 5 void reversions were expressionless, but their spirit consciousnesses were secretly communicating. Su Zimo waved his hand and put away the mystic magnet mountain. At the same time, he also put away the 49 perfect grade perfected Lord flying swords below. Unfortunately, he did not manage to obtain the storage bags of Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Panglan. Yi Tiancheng's mysterious stone hammer was also put away by Chaos Essence Sect cultivators. Perfected Lord Panglan's Khanate perfected Lord flying sword was in Su Zimo's hands instead. Su Zimo gave the flying sword to Ji Chengtian without hesitation. He had Qinglian of creation, and a dermic weapon like a flying sword would not increase his combat strength by much. He might as well give it to his best friend. That scene made many Jining Jinjuan envious once more. In that short period of time, Su Zimo had given away 2 Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapons and a cup of supreme grade mystic tea. Any one of those items would cause many cultivators to be envious and fight for it. Ji Chengtian knew that dozens of years ago, he was hunted down by Di'in because of his relationship with Su Zimo and narrowly escaped death. Su Zimo felt guilty. Now that Su Zimo had returned, the Khanate dermic weapon was meant to make up for the guilt in his heart. Ji Chengtian pondered for a moment and did not decline. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to a monk leading the group of formless monastery of the Buddhist monasteries, and he said indifferently, "Hand it over." That was a void reversion monk with the dermic name of Xian Ming. The crowd was stunned. Everyone could not understand why Su Zimo would suddenly target the Buddhist monasteries. Right from the beginning, the monks of the Buddhist monasteries had been watching by the sidelines. Could it be that Su Zimo had reached the stage where he considered everyone beneath him? Monk Xianming lowered his gaze without looking at Su Zimo and asked, "Patron Su, what are you talking about? Are there monks like you in the Buddhist monasteries who are unclean?" Su Zimo scoffed coldly, his eyes filled with mockery. "Patron, watch your words. Who are you talking about? How have we, the monks of Formless Monastery, offended you?" Many monks of Formless Monastery glared at him. Su Zimo's expression turned cold as he glared at Monk Xianming and asked once more, "Monk, does that mean that you're trying to play dumb with me? Patron Su, please speak clearly." Monk Xianming was still expressionless and was neither anxious nor annoyed. Good. Su Zimo nodded. "Since you want to pretend, I'll let you suffer a little. Break." Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he hollered softly, "Xing." The cultivators were still confused. They heard the sound of clothes tearing and saw green rays of light bursting forth from beneath Monk Xianming's robes. A green lotus platform appeared and broke free from Monk Xianming's storage bag, revealing itself. The creation lotus platform. Everyone's mouths were agape as they gradually came to a realization. Just now, during the battle between Su Zimo and Yi Tiancheng, the creation Qinglian collided with the mysterious stone hammer. The creation Qinglian fell into the crowd, and before Su Zimo could retrieve it, Monk Xianming of Formless Monastery had hidden it. Poof! The creation Qinglian spun slowly and slashed open wounds on Monk Xianming's waist, causing blood to gush out. In the blink of an eye, his robes were stained. Monk Xianming grunted dully and retreated half a step. There was no way his body could defend against the power of the creation Qinglian. The creation Qinglian wanted to tear through the air and escape. However, Monk Xianming hurriedly summoned a wooden fish to suppress the creation Qinglian. Monk Xianming circulated his dermic powers and injected them into the wooden fish. The wooden fish shone brightly and pressed the creation Qinglian in midair, immobilizing it. Monk, do you think that I can't sense it just because you added a seal on your storage bag? Su Zimo sneered. The creation Qinglian is my destiny dermic weapon, and has been nurtured for 100 years. It's not something a monk with ill intentions like you can lay a finger on. Seeing that he could no longer pretend, Monk Xianming decided to go all out and said in a deep voice, Junior, don't slander me. The creation Qinglian is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries to begin with. Since it has appeared, it should be returned to the Buddhist monasteries. This was completely twisting words and forcing logic. Dao Bing Yuding frowned and was about to step forward to persuade him when Su Zimo's expression darkened completely. He recalled the difference between immortals and fiends that Demoness Ji had mentioned. If someone from the fiend sex took a liking to something, they would snatch it openly. As for those from the immortal sex, they would snatch it as well. However, they would frame those from the fiend sex in secret. Right now, not only did Monk Xianming of the Buddhist monasteries want to snatch his creation Qinglian, he was even acting righteously. How dare you snatch something from me? Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he said slowly, you must be tired of living. Chapter 962. The cultivators were moved. Was he threatening a void reversion? After killing Yi Qiancheng and perfected Lord Panglong consecutively, Su Zimo's combat strength had already conquered all the nascent soul paragons present. But now, everyone was shocked that Su Zimo would say something like that to a void reversion of the Buddhist monasteries. Isn't Su Zimo way too arrogant? To think that he's threatening a void reversion. He must be a little arrogant after killing 2 paragons consecutively, and doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, given Su Zimo's combat strength, he should be able to challenge a void reversion who is a major cultivation realm above him. However, this is the successor of Formless Monastery of the Buddhist monasteries and not an ordinary void reversion. He has just gone through 2 huge battles and is mentally and physically exhausted. If he dares to provoke a void reversion at this moment, he's asking for humiliation. Boom! The ground trembled. As the cultivators discussed and questioned, Su Zimo had already attacked. He was no longer threatening the void reversion. Instead, he chose to attack the latter directly. The moment Su Zimo's feet landed on the ground, he charged forward and arrived before Monk Xianming in the blink of an eye with a series of explosions behind him. Let go! With a flip of his palm, Su Zimo smashed down towards Monk Xiantian's head with a terrifying aura that blotted out the skies. How dare you? Back down! Of the 6 Buddhist monasteries, the 3 major monasteries of the Middle Continent were all present and stood together. When Hollow Monastery and Wisdom Monastery saw that Monk Xianming was attacked, they hollered without hesitation and attacked one after another. Void Finger. Wisdom Palm. A finger and a palm strike came at him. Formless Dermic Seal. Monk Xianming harumphed coldly and conjured a dermic seal with both hands in an unhurried manner, smashing it towards Su Zimo. The 3 void reversion monks counterattacked at the same time with terrifying strength and torrential dermic powers with a terrifying might. Fufu, Su Zimo has a death wish. He can't blame anyone else. To think that you would dare to make the first move against a void reversion. Fufu, you're truly condescending and look down on all the heroes of the world. He probably did not expect that he would attract the counterattack of 3 void reversions himself. Some shook their heads, some sneered, some gloated, and some were worried. Master, are you still not going to make a move? Lung Ro abruptly turned around and looked at Arikatsuki Michinoku, questioning him loudly. Arikatsuki Michinoku's eyes flickered. Just as he was about to raise his hand, he pondered for a moment and closed his eyes. In the end, he did not interfere. This was equivalent to Arikatsuki Michinoku tacitly agreeing to the 3 void reversions attacking Su Zimo. The distance between Taoist Yuding and the Buddhist sect was rather far. It was a little too far for him to help at that moment. At this moment, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed. Dao being Qi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Void Reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect and Hellfire Hall who were watching the battle not far away stood up at the same time. The 5 Void Reversions remained silent with cold expressions and rays of light shone from their glabella. Suddenly an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness fluctuation burst forth and condensed into sabers, swords, spears and lances in midair, charging towards Su Zimo fiercely. In an instant the void trembled and ripples appeared. Pust! The expressions of the cultivators changed when they saw that. The 5 Void Reversions attacked at the same time. Furthermore, they did not probe at all. They did not get close to Su Zimo or even use any dermic arts. Instead, they released their Essence Spirit secret skills directly. A fatal blow. The Dao Reversions attacked Jining Jinjuan and released their Essence Spirit secret skills. Furthermore, 5 Void Reversions attacked at the same time. This was equivalent to not giving Su Zimo any chance to survive or counterattack at all. They wanted him dead. It was a fatal blow. This was much more terrifying than the Spirit Consciousness attack, released by Perfected Lord Panglan just now. A single Essence Spirit secret skill was enough to wipe out Perfected Lord Panglan's Essence Spirit, let alone 5 at the same time. The timing of the 5 Void Reversions was perfect. They had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. That was because there were 3 Void Reversions of the Buddhist monasteries in front of Su Zimo that attracted all of Su Zimo's attention. To be more precise, this was a sure-death situation. 8 Void Reversions joining forces to kill a single nascent soul. This was probably the first time in history that something like this had happened. Fairy Luo Shui of Snowdrift Valley was enraged and stood up with a shocked expression. At that moment it was already too late for her to help. The only person who could stop everything from happening was Arikatsuki Michinoku. However, at that moment, Arikatsuki Michinoku closed his eyes. The cultivators were silent when they saw that. So what if he was the number 1 perfected lord? As Arikatsuki Michinoku had said, one's sharpness was too strong and would eventually be killed. It was somewhat ironic at the thought of it. The 3 number 1s of the phenomenon ranking were all dead today. However, who would have thought that the once-in-a-thousand-years Thousand Crane Tea Party would turn into the burial ground of these monster incarnates? Just as the cultivators lamented internally, Su Zimo, who was in the center of the storm, had already retracted his palm. His gaze was as deep as the ocean and he was frighteningly calm. His black hair swayed without wind. In the blink of an eye, strands of scarlet hair were mixed in between his black hair. Su Zimo's eyes turned red and black as well. Crackle. The sound of bones growing could be heard from Su Zimo's body. His body began to expand and climb. A shuddering aura of destruction emanated from his body. It was savage and primordial, as though it came from the primordial era. With rumbling demonic chi and torrential ferocity, Su Zimo's clothes were torn and scarlet scales appeared on the surface of his skin, as though he was a piece of metal that was burned red by flames. His eyes were filled with killing intent, as though they were doors and windows that led to the 9 hells. Heavens, what kind of monster is that? Why can't I circulate my bloodline? What bloodline is flowing in that person's body? To think that it can suppress my bloodline? Is this a dragon? The voices of the cultivators trembled and their eyes were filled with endless fear. Fairy Luo Shui, Hang Qiuyu and the others were shocked. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, they had personally witnessed Su Zimo transforming into a dragon, and it was extremely shocking. It was also because of the burst of dragonification that Su Zimo was able to kill the Protoss completely. But now, Su Zimo was even more terrifying than the dragonified existence in Myriad Phenomenon City, 100 years ago. Someone's about to die. Almost at the same time, Fairy Luo Shui, Hang Qiuyu and the others murmured softly. In Su Zimo's consciousness, his 2 essence spirits had already fused into one. Since the 8 void reversions had attacked at the same time, he could not care less and could only fuse his essence spirits to defend against this fatal situation. The attacks of the 5 void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and Hellfire Palace ignited the killing intent in his heart. Since Arikatsuki Michinoku turned a blind eye to it, he couldn't blame him for going on a killing spree. Chapter 963. Although the 5 void reversions of Zephyr Thunder Palace and Chaos Essence Sect attacked later, the attacks of their Essence Spirit secret skills arrived instantly, and were the first to arrive. After transforming into a dragon, Su Zimo channeled the Mingwang prayer beads right away. Buzz! A series of golden lights shone from Su Zimo's left wrist in a bedazzling manner that enveloped his entire body. In the blink of an eye, a shimmering golden barrier formed around him. Ancient and mysterious Sanskrit appeared on it in a flawless manner. Essence Spirit Dermic Weapon? The gazes of Dao being Qi Gai and the others narrowed. Among dermic weapons, Essence Spirit Dermic weapons were the rarest. Furthermore, given their judgment, the dermic weapon on Su Zimo's wrist was of an extremely high grade and was a rare utmost treasure for them as well. A look of greed flashed through the eyes of the 5 of them. Su Zimo truly had way too many treasures on him. After killing this lad, there would definitely be a fierce battle to snatch his treasures. Creation Qinglian had already fallen into the hands of the Buddhist monasteries. They had to snatch the remaining treasures. Bang! 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 The moment the golden barrier was formed, the spirit consciousnesses of 5 essence spirit secret skills had already descended. If they were any slower, Su Zimo would have been killed by the 5 spirit consciousnesses. The golden barrier trembled continuously and the Sanskrit dimmed. The 2 powers were only in a stalemate for a moment before the golden barrier shattered. However, the power of the 5 spirit consciousnesses had already been reduced by more than half. Swoosh! The 5 remnant spirit consciousnesses entered Su Zimo's glabella instantly. When they saw that, the 5 void reversions sneered internally. So what if he had an essence spirit dermic weapon? This lad's cultivation realm was insufficient after all, and he could not unleash the true power of the essence spirit dermic weapon. Furthermore, this was an essence spirit secret skill released by the 5 of them together. Even if most of the power was blocked by the essence spirit dermic weapon, the remaining spirit consciousnesses were enough to kill Su Zimo when they surged into his consciousness. The 5 spirit consciousnesses barged into Su Zimo's consciousness and caused a series of raging waves that surged towards Su Zimo's essence spirit. Although Creation Qinglian was still in the hands of monk Xianming of the Buddhist monasteries, the 45 lotus seeds circled Su Zimo's essence spirit without leaving. Creation Qinglian could not defend against spirit consciousnesses. However, Son of Qinglian was an essence spirit dermic weapon. Su Zimo's essence spirit secret to the essence spirit, Su Zimo's essence spirit, emitting a terrifying sharp aura Qi spirit. The moment the 5 spirit consciousnesses descended, they were sliced into pieces by the 45 lotus seeds and their powers were almost completely dissipated. Zimo Su Zimo's essence spirit dermic weapon spirit, Su Zimo Zimo to the Zimo at the same time. The attacks of the 3 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries had already arrived. At that moment, Su Zimo had just defended against the attacks of the 5 spirit consciousnesses. It was already too late for him to raise his hand to defend against the attacks of the 3 void reversions, unless the 3 void reversions paused for a moment to give him time to react. However, that was impossible. Xiankong Temple and Sanskrit Temple's 2 great monks sighed inwardly, unable to bear it any longer, even holding back slightly. As for monk Xianming of Formless Monastery, he knew that he was in the wrong for snatching Su Zimo's Creation Qinglian. The Creation Qinglian would only be ownerless if Su Zimo was killed. The moment that thought flashed through his mind, monk Xianming's eyes flashed coldly and the unparalleled dermic seals conjured by his hands became even more ferocious. Right then, Su Zimo opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar. Roar! The world shook. The roar was mighty and powerful, piercing through metal and rocks with an ancient aura. It was filled with endless fury, as though it wanted to bring down the stars. That was not the voice of a human. It was a dragon's roar. Silence reigned. After the dragon's roar sounded, it was as though the world had gone silent. Given Su Zimo's blood qi, the lethality of the dragon's roar was extremely terrifying. The first to bear the brunt of it were the 3 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries. The 3 of them shuddered as though they were struck by lightning. Their eyes widened and their minds went blank for a brief moment. Void Finger and Wisdom Palm paused for a moment. Monk Xianming's formless dermic seal was nearly shattered by that roar. The fact that the three of them could bring their nascent soul paragons here meant that their strength was naturally not to be underestimated. If it was any other void reversion, their souls would have been destroyed by that roar. However, for Su Zimo, that brief pause was enough. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and his blood chi surged. He threw 3 punches at the 3 void reversions of the Buddhist monasteries at lightning speed. Bang! 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 Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Even void reversion monks could not defend against Su Zimo's body. Furthermore, that was the power released by channeling his blood chi with all his might after dragonification. It could be said to be destructive. The void finger of the void reversion monk of Hollow Monastery was shattered by Su Zimo's punch, and his entire palm was smashed into meat paste. The outcome of the void reversion monk of Wisdom Monastery was almost the same. The moment the wisdom palm descended, it was smashed into smithereens by Su Zimo's punch. The bones in his entire arm were broken and he was completely crippled. The 2 void reversion monks cried out in pain as their faces turned pale. They fell back heavily into the crowd in a wretched manner. That was even after Su Zimo showed mercy. Although he had transformed into a dragon, he had not lost his mind. Just now, the 2 void reversion monks were compassionate and saved themselves unknowingly by restraining their strength. Su Zimo was decisive in killing, but he was not bloodthirsty. What he wanted was to have a clear mind and take revenge as he pleased. He only killed people who deserved to be killed. Monk Xianming was someone who deserved to be killed. Su Zimo threw 3 punches in succession, 2 of them towards the void finger and wisdom palm of the 2 monks. The 3rd punch landed on Monk Xianming's head. Poof! Monk Xianming's head was shattered and his essence spirit was destroyed. He was shocked by the dragon roar and could not react at all. Without any way of resisting, he was killed by a single punch. The crowd was shocked. Changes happened instantly on the battlefield. Nobody expected that the outcome of 8 void reversions attacking at the same time would cause 2 of them to be severely injured and 1 to die on the spot. How was that possible? Even the essence spirit secret skills of 5 void reversions could not kill this person? How did this person still have the strength to retaliate? That was not only the confusion of the crowd, but also the confusion of the 5 void reversions of Zephyr Thunder Palace and Chaos Essence Sect. The 5 of them were also shocked by the dragon roar. However, they reacted quickly. Immediately after, the 5 of them were bewildered and their eyes shone with endless confusion. Su Zimo severely injured the 2 void reversions of Hollow Monastery and Wisdom Monastery with 2 punches and killed Monk Xianming with a single punch. Without stopping, he pressed down with his palm and snatched back Creation Qinglian. The 5 of you, hand over your lives. Su Zimo turned around suddenly and glared at Dao Bing Chigai and the other 4. He grinned and exuded a torrential killing intent, resembling a god of massacre that had walked out of the 9 hells. Chapter 964. Su Zimo injected dermic powers in reverse and tossed Creation Qinglian out. Creation Qinglian transformed into a streak of light and sped towards the void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect. Arriving instantly. Boom! In a flash, Su Zimo charged towards Dao Bing Chigai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper Sect, causing sand and rocks to fly everywhere he passed. In midair, Su Zimo condensed a sword finger and touched his glabella gently, pointing in the direction of the void reversion of Sword Sect. Whoosh! 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 45 green beams of light burst forth from his glabella and pierced towards the void reversion of Sword Sect. Those were 45 sons of Qinglian. Instantly, all of them exploded. At the same time, Su Zimo conjured hand seals and 2 balls of flames with different colors and auras condensed in his palms. One was scarlet red and the other was golden. Immortal Dao Fire, Buddhist Dao Fire. In his consciousness, his essence spirit was already pushed to its limits. Dermic power surged into the 2 balls of Dao Fire endlessly. Condense! Su Zimo approached the 2 balls of flames and channeled a supreme secret skill, fusing them together to form a dual-colored Dao Fire. Samadhi Dao Fire. Nangongling, Yuhanyan and Ruxian widened their eyes and almost exclaimed. In the entire mystic courtyard, there were very few cultivators who could recognize this dermic art. The 3 of them were legacy disciples of Dao Lord Scarlet Star, and were naturally cultivating the Samadhi Dao Fire as well. However, they had yet to succeed. In their opinion, the secret skill Su Zimo used was the Samadhi Dao fire. However, there were still some differences from the Samadhi Dao fire in their memories. The greatest difference was that the Samadhi Dao fire had 3 balls of flames. However, Su Zimo only condensed 2 balls. Furthermore, in the Samadhi Dao fire that they cultivated, every Dao fire had the same color. They were all scarlet red and there were no golden flames at all. What truly shocked the 3 of them was that although there were only 2 balls of Dao fire in Su Zimo's palms, however, the Dao fire formed from the fusion of these 2 Dao fires seemed to be even more terrifying than the Samadhi Dao fire in their impression. The 3 of them did not know that the nature of the Samadhi Dao fire had completely changed in Su Zimo's hands. The original meaning of Samadhi was the Samadhi of essence, chi and spirit. However, when it came to Su Zimo, he interpreted it as the Samadhi of immortals, Buddhas and devils. This kind of understanding had more than doubled the realm and layout of this spell. The original Samadhi Dao fire was the top spell in the Red Flame Heart Sutra. And it was also one of Hakuya Dojin's trump cards. Su Zimo's Samadhi Dao fire raised this Dharma spell to a whole new level. No one had ever seen its might before, and no one could imagine it. Therefore, even though Su Zimo did not condense the true Samadhi Dao fire and merely fused the Dao fires of the immortal and Buddhist sects together, its power was still rather terrifying. Go! Su Zimo scolded softly. The ball of Dvyadi Dao fire floated towards the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. At that moment, Su Zimo had already arrived before Dao Being Chi Gai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect. He extended his palm and enveloped the 2 of them. It was peerlessly terrifying. The crowd of cultivators widened their eyes in fear and shock. Initially, Dao Being Yuding wanted to help. However, at that moment he realized that he did not know where to start. Fairy Luoxue stood up initially, wanting to help Su Zimo. However, at that moment, she sat back down slowly. Nobody could have imagined that such a fatal situation could be resolved by Su Zimo, who was at the nascent soul realm. Furthermore, his counterattack was so ferocious and terrifying that it was suffocating. After Su Zimo severely injured the 2 void reversions and killed monk Xianming, he fought against 5 alone. The 5 void reversions were all within his attack range. That was the boldness of the number 1 perfected Lord. That was the method of the number 1 perfected Lord. There was no such thing as fighting one-on-one. Since they were going to fight, none of the 5 void reversions could escape. The first to make contact was the void reversion of Chaos Essence sect. When he saw the creation Qinglian attacking, the void reversion of Chaos Essence sect did not dare to be careless. He swiped his storage bag and summoned a gigantic silver shield to block in front of him. After injecting dermic powers, the shield's aura expanded. Whoosh! For bedazzling lights shone on the silver shield. A supreme-grade Dao Being dermic weapon. According to his plan, he would first defend against the creation Qinglian's attack. It would be best if he could capture the creation Qinglian before counterattacking. However, he had truly underestimated the creation Qinglian and Su Zimo's strength. This was the grade 5 creation Qinglian and its power was comparable to a Khanate Dao Being dermic weapon. His shield could not defend against it at all. Furthermore, the creation Qinglian was Su Zimo's destiny dermic weapon, and was even stronger. It was thrown out by Su Zimo with all his strength. This explosion was no different from a meteor crashing. Boom! The creation Qinglian collided with the silver shield and let out a deafening bang. The void reversion of Chaos Essence sect's expression changed starkly. When he sensed the power of the collision, he suddenly realized that something was amiss. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Without pausing, the silver shield exploded and the creation Qinglian charged straight in, charging towards the void reversion of Chaos Essence sect. Ah! He only had time to yell before his head was smashed into pieces by the creation Green Lotus. His essence spirit was destroyed on the spot before it could escape. Against this attack, if he had chosen to summon his destiny dermic weapon right away to defend with all his might, he might have had a chance of survival. Unfortunately, not only did he underestimate the creation Qinglian, he also underestimated Su Zimo. He was still thinking of counterattacking, but he did not know that the scythe of death was hanging over his neck. A single mistake and he would die. The moment the void reversion of Chaos Essence sect died, Su Zimo's other attack had already descended. 45 lotus seeds were densely packed and stabbed towards the void reversion of Sword Sect, sealing off all his escape routes. Initially, the void reversion of Sword Sect wanted to throw out a few talismans to defend against the attack of the lotus seeds. However, from the corner of his eye, he could not help but be shocked when he saw the void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect die. On second thought, the void reversion of Sword Sect had a grim expression and did not dare to be careless. Chapter 965. Be careful, senior brother. The void reversion of Sword Sect sneered internally when he heard Hang Choyu's warning. With the advantage of his destiny dermic weapon and the might of his sect's sword art, he had already blocked all 45 lotus seeds. The few talismans that he tore were unnecessary. What was there to be careful about? The moment that thought crossed his mind, his expression changed starkly. Something was not right. Although the 45 lotus seeds were chopped down, the lotus seeds emitted rays of green light that penetrated his sword chi barrier, penetrated his talisman defense, and surged into his sea of consciousness. Qinglian's sun was an essence spirit dermic weapon. Although the sword light talisman could block the main body of the lotus seeds, it could not block the killing power of the spirit consciousness released by the lotus seeds. By the time the void reversion of Sword Sect sensed it, it was already too late. Poof! 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 45 beams of light surged into his consciousness and pierced his essence spirit instantly like thousands of arrows. Clang! The sword fell and the talisman dissipated. The void reversion of Sword Sect's gaze was unfocused and there were no wounds on his body. However, there was no life force in his body as he collapsed stiffly. That was a killing move that targeted the essence spirit. Although he looked unscathed on the surface, his essence spirit was destroyed and he was dead. Many Sword Sect cultivators were shocked when they saw the void reversion of their sect fall. They retreated with pale faces. Only Hang Choyu stood at the front with a conflicted expression and sighed deeply. In some ways he was lucky. He had witnessed Su Zimo's methods. Therefore he felt fear in his heart. He would not take any chances and would not try to challenge that person again. However, many people had not seen it before. Therefore, many people wanted to kill this monster incarnate. However, none of them saw how many corpses were piled beneath the monster incarnate's feet. Which of those corpses were not paragons when they were alive? Without fighting that person, they would never be able to experience that suffocating fear. Hang Choyu did not want to experience it anymore. He sighed and put away the corpse of the void reversion of his sect. The only thing he could do was not take revenge, but return to the sect and bury him properly. That was all. On the battlefield. Although it took a long time to describe, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Now that the two void reversions were dead, the Dviadi Dao fire that Su Zimo condensed had already floated in front of the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. He hesitated. When he saw Su Zimo condense Dao fire and attack him, his first reaction was disdain. He was afraid of Su Zimo's corporeal body and was afraid of fighting Su Zimo in close combat. But he wasn't afraid of fighting with magical powers. After all, the difference in their primordial spirits was an entire realm, and the difference in their dermic powers was several times greater. Such a gap was simply impossible to make up for. Therefore, he also formed a spell and prepared to counterattack with the nether fire. However, right after, he saw the two void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect and Sword Sect die. This caused his mind to be greatly shaken, and he almost turned around to flee. Soon he calmed down. The death of the two void reversions of Primordial Chaos Sect and Sword Sect was mainly due to Qinglian's power. But now there was no need for him to fear this fire-type spell. Furthermore, he had already conjured his dermic art in front of everyone. If he turned around and fled, he would definitely become a laughingstock. At that thought, he made the worst decision of his life. It was also his final decision. How dare you embarrass yourself with such petty tricks? The void reversion of Hellfire Hall sneered and conjured a ball of nether fire in his hands. It emitted a sinister aura and collided with the incoming Dao fire. There was no intense collision as he had imagined. Shing! Almost instantly, his nether fire was extinguished as if it had encountered some terrifying force. After Su Zimo's two essence spirits fused, his essence spirit was no longer weaker than a void reversion's essence spirit. In fact, it was even stronger. The Buddhist Tao fire alone was enough to suppress the nether fire. Furthermore, it was the Dvyadi Tao fire formed by the immortal and Buddhist sects. It was almost a complete suppression. Swoosh! Under the widened eyes of the void reversion of Hellfire Hall, the dual-colored Tao fire surged over and engulfed him, burning him furiously. Ah! Hysterical screams could be heard coming from the flames. It lasted for less than 2 to 3 breaths before it went silent. The flames gradually extinguished and dust fell. That might be the only trace left behind by the void reversion of Hellfire Hall. The power of the Dvyadi Tao fire was so terrifying that it burned a void reversion to ashes. In the blink of an eye, 3 of the 5 void reversions were dead. The entire process was so short that Su Zimo arrived before Tao Being Chigai and the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect. The moment he attacked, he enveloped the 2 of them. Just as the 2 of them were about to join forces to hold on for a moment, they realized that the 3 void reversions of Sword Sect were already dead. This scene caused the 2 of them to be greatly shocked. Before they attacked, they were certain that they could not engage in melee combat with Su Zimo. Right now, the 2 of them were only inches away from Su Zimo. It was equivalent to them taking half a step into the gates of hell. Ah! The void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect roared and prepared to fight to the death. Su Zimo turned his head slightly and glared at him. Suddenly, his right eye turned white and shone with a faint light. It was extremely strange. Suddenly, the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect felt his heart skip a beat. Before he could react, a bedazzling beam of light burst forth from Su Zimo's right eye. It emitted a scorching aura and entered the head of the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect instantly. All his energy was focused on defending against Su Zimo's melee combat. He did not expect this turn of events. Poof! The head of the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect was penetrated by the blazing beam of light, and his essence spirit was destroyed. He was deader than dead. The illumination dragon I killed another person. In the blink of an eye, Tao Being Chigai was the only one left. When he sensed Su Zimo's palm descending in an overwhelming manner, and that even the void reversion of Heavenly Dipper sect beside him was dead, he was scared out of his wits. Even if he had 500 kilograms of strength, he could not lift it at all. Tao Being Chigai's mind was blank, and all that was left was a strong desire to survive. His eyes were filled with fear as he shouted instinctively, "Perfected Lord, spare me!" Against Su Zimo, he was scared out of his wits. Swoosh! The palm that seemed like it could destroy the world suddenly stopped. It hovered above his head motionlessly. When the cultivators saw that, they felt an unimaginable shock. That was a void reversion of Zephyr Thunder Palace. To think that he would end up begging for mercy under the palm of a Jinying Zhenjuan. Su Zimo looked at the person quietly with an indifferent expression. He smirked and asked mockingly, "Spare me?" Tao Being Chigai's face was pale as he nodded repeatedly. When he sensed the killing intent emanating from Su Zimo, it was a bloodline aura that seemed to have originated from the primordial era. His lips trembled and he was so scared that he could not speak. "It's too late," sighing faintly, Su Zimo slapped down. Piak! Tao Being Chigai's expression froze and his eyes widened. Streaks of blood appeared on his face. His head had been smashed into pieces by this palm. His essence spirit was shattered into pieces and he died on the spot. In the blink of an eye, all 5 void reversions were killed without exception. Chapter 966. The gigantic mystic courtyard was silent. The cultivators looked at the messy battlefield in a daze. They looked at the tall and terrifying figure in the middle of the battlefield and forgot to breathe for a moment. If the cultivators had not witnessed such an outcome personally, who would have believed it? The nascent soul paragon of Snowdrift Valley, Ling Bai, was dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with shock, and the only thing left in his mind was what Fairy Luoshui had said just now. Since he was here, there was nothing to fear at the Thousand Crane Tea Party unless the Dharma Daojun appeared. His prophecy came true. The encirclement of 8 void reversions was destroyed by this person with ease. 6 void reversions died and 2 were severely injured. This was the number 1 perfected lord. Amidst their shock, Nangongling, Yu Hanyan and Ru Xian suddenly thought of something. Back then, they were in danger outside Wind Cloud City, and were kidnapped by the Dharma Daojun of Hellfire Hall and 7 void reversions. Thereafter they returned safely. Initially, the 3 of them thought that it was done by some peerless expert. But now, it seemed like that peerless expert was most likely Suzimo. Suzimo is truly a fiend demon. That's right. He's completely exposed and can't hide it any longer. What fiend demon is that? Just now, why didn't the demon-revealing mirror reflect his true form? Gradually, whispers began to spread from the crowd. Instinctively, the cultivators looked at the Chiguramon patriarch, Arakatsuki Michinoku, at the top. At that moment, Arakatsuki Michinoku's expression was extremely terrible. Just now, 8 void reversions attacked at the same time. However, she chose to ignore them and watch from the sidelines. In fact, she even closed her eyes. She had it all planned out. Suzimo had already offended many super sects, and the only one backing him was the declining 100 Refinement sect. The 100 Refinement sect could not even protect themselves, so how could they protect Suzimo? Even if Suzimo fell here, it was nothing. No one would find trouble with her, and Chiguramon would not be implicated. That way, there would be an explanation for the deaths of Yi Tiancheng, Perfected Lord Panglan and the others. However, not long after she closed her eyes, she heard an ancient howl that shook the heavens and earth. Even her mind began to waver. Dragon roar? Arakatsuki Michinoku froze for a moment, unable to react. Inside this mystic courtyard, why would there be a dragon roar sounding out? She instinctively opened her eyes and saw this scene. 2 void reversion realm monks of the Buddhist sect had fallen with heavy injuries, and monk Xianming had died. The void reversions of Chaos Essence sect, Sword sect and Hellfire Hall had just died as well. A tall and muscular body that emitted a terrifying aura had already arrived before Dao Bing Chi Gai. And the void reversion of Sword sect. Dragons? Arakatsuki Michinoku's heart skipped a beat. Although the tall figure before her did not take on the form of dragons, the aura he exuded was no different from dragons. That single delay caused the void reversion of Sword sect to die and be killed by the Illumination Dragon Eye. Immediately after, Dao Bing Chi Gai was killed by this person as well. It was only at that moment that Arakatsuki Michinoku realized that the tall figure with dragon scales and red and black eyes was Suzimo. It was too late. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over and the dust had settled. Arakatsuki Michinoku stood up slowly and exuded an extremely powerful might that suppressed over. She summoned the demon-revealing mirror in reverse. Whoosh! A pillar of light shone down and enveloped Suzimo. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat, and his 2 essence spirits separated. The scarlet-haired Een spirit hid and the black-haired essence spirit continued to guard his consciousness. Crackle! In the blink of an eye, Suzimo returned to normal and turned into that handsome cultivator with clear, pitch-black eyes. Even though he was enveloped by the demon-revealing mirror, his expression was indifferent. This change made Arakatsuki Michinoku feel like she was being toyed with. Her expression had completely darkened. Suzimo, I don't care if you're a human or a demon. If you dare to kill at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, it's equivalent to Patriarch. Before Arakatsuki Michinoku could finish, she was interrupted by Suzimo. Everyone present can see the reason why I killed. Everyone has their own opinions on what's right and wrong. Pausing for a moment, Suzimo continued, furthermore, this conflict could have been avoided. Since someone turned a blind eye and stood by idly, don't blame me for starting a massacre. Are you blaming me? Arakatsuki Michinoku narrowed her gaze and asked murderously with a frosty expression. Her patience had already been exhausted. For the 1,000 Crane Tea Party to develop to such an extent, it could be considered a complete failure. However, the root of this failure pointed to a single person. It was Suzimo before her. I can't say that I'm blaming you. However, I do have something to say to Patriarch. Suzimo glanced at Lung Ro beside him and nodded before raising his voice. Patriarch Lanyue, it's fine if you want to make use of the marriage alliance to befriend Chaos Essence sect and obtain their support. However, you should at least respect Lung Ro's intentions. What did you say? Arakatsuki Michinoku hollered guiltily. It was one thing for everyone to know that this was not honorable. However, it was another thing for him to say it in public. None of the cultivators present are fools. Who can't tell what Patriarch is thinking? Suzimo said indifferently. Lung Ro is a disciple of the Chiguramon and it's not wrong for her to be your disciple. However, you have no right to decide Lung Ro's future. You're pushing her into a pit of fire. Lung Ro looked at Suzimo and the coldness in her eyes dissipated. She knew that Suzimo was speaking up for her and standing up for her. Those words were from the bottom of her heart, but she did not dare to say them out loud. Lung Ro could not imagine what would have happened to her if not for Suzimo. Suzimo shook his head and smiled mockingly. Furthermore, the facts have proven that you have poor taste. Yi Tianqing is not an impressive monster incarnate either. I've already killed him. The reason why you're interested in Chaos Essence Sect is because of the two paragons that rose in this generation. Now that one of them is dead, the other won't live for long either. Suzimo, let's see how long more you can be arrogant. A perfected lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and said in a deep voice, Patriarch of Lanyue, Suzimo is no doubt a fiend demon. He massacred human cultivators wantonly at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. If you don't give us an explanation, the immortal sects will definitely not let this matter rest. Perfected Lord Sword Formation mustered his courage and declared loudly, I've already released the messenger spirit Crane. Once Sword Sect receives the news, the Dharma Daojun will definitely descend personally. At that time, let's see how the Chiguramon will explain themselves. That's right. The perfected Lord of Heavenly Dipper Sect grit his teeth. Dharma characteristic experts of our sect will rush over immediately as well. Master, you can't. Lung Ro said hurriedly. There's nothing unusual about Suzimo under the demon revealing mirror. He's a human. Just now, it might just be a secret skill that he's cultivating. Furthermore, he's not to blame for this at all. Fairy Luoxue stood out as well and cupped her fists. Patriarch of Lanyue. Don't forget that Chiguramon owes Suzimo a huge favor in Myriad Phenomenon City, 100 years ago. Arikatsuki Michinoku's gaze was cold and she remained silent. The cultivators glanced sideways, waiting for her attitude. Her attitude would determine Suzimo's life and death. Chapter 967. Arikatsuki Michinoku was expressionless. So many people had died at the Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round and each of them had a greater background than the other. Even 7 void reversions had died. There was no way she could escape responsibility. If she did not handle this properly, even Chiguramon would be implicated. However, Chiguramon was indebted to Suzimo. If she were to kill Suzimo here right now, Chiguramon would definitely be labeled as an ingrate and cause endless criticism. Arikatsuki Michinoku's thoughts raced as she came up with a plan. Suzimo, if not for the fact that you've done Chiguramon a favor in the past, I would definitely kill you here for what you've done today. I won't let you off. Arikatsuki Michinoku's voice was cold. However, Lung Ro, Little Fatty and the others were delighted when they heard that. In other words, Arikatsuki Michinoku did not seem like she was prepared to attack Suzimo. Pausing for a moment, Arikatsuki Michinoku changed the topic. However, you've caused a huge disaster today. Even I, Chiguramon, can't protect you. I've repeatedly reminded you to restrain yourself. You're the one who refused to listen. You can't blame anyone else. A mocking look flashed through Suzimo's eyes as he said indifferently, Patriarch, there's no need to beat around the bush. Just say what you have to say. Arikatsuki Michinoku took a deep breath and said calmly, I won't kill you, but you can't leave Chiguramon either. Stay here and continue being a guest. A commotion broke out in the crowd. What a ruthless move. How ruthless. On the surface, she didn't attack Suzimo. However, if she imprisons him here, Suzimo won't be able to escape death when the Dharma characteristic experts of Chaos Essence Sect, Sword Sect and Heavenly Dipper Sect arrive. In that case, Chiguramon can be considered as giving Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sects an explanation. Furthermore, most importantly, Arikatsuki Michinoku did not attack Suzimo and won't be labeled as an ingrate. What a way to kill someone with a borrowed knife. All the cultivators present who could cultivate to the nascent soul realm were not fools. They quickly understood what Arikatsuki Michinoku was thinking and began discussing softly. Suzimo. Suzimo chuckled and asked instead, why? You want to detain me in Thousand Crane Sect? Junior, you should know what's good for you. Arakatsuki Michinoku replied indifferently, as the patriarch, I'm inviting you to stay in Chiguramon for a few days. Furthermore, you're best friends with Lung Ro and haven't seen each other for 100 years. I'm sure you have a lot to talk about and I can fulfill your wish. Master, shut up. The moment Lung Ro opened her mouth, she was interrupted by Arakatsuki Michinoku with a glare. How pretentious! A look of mockery flashed through Suzumo's eyes as he sneered, Arakatsuki Michinoku, you don't have any of the righteousness of the immortal sex at all. You've learned 100% of how to be a hypocrite and cunning. Suzumo retracted his smile and asked slowly, what if I insist on leaving? Then don't blame me for not being courteous and suppressing you here. Arakatsuki Michinoku said coldly, Junior, since we've already said this, I advise you to take care of yourself and suffer less. The Dharma Daojuan's aura descended slowly and enveloped the entire mystic courtyard. Jining Zhenjuan felt as though he was carrying a towering mountain on his back and could not move at all. Ha 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 ha. Suzumo roared with laughter. Even in the face of the Dharma Daojuan's aura, he was still full of pride and shouted, listen up, Lanyue. Although I can't defeat you if I, Suzumo, want to leave, you can't stop me. His pride was soaring. It was already rare for Jining Zhenjuan to be able to remain neither servile nor overbearing against the Dharma Daojun despite the difference of two major cultivation realms. The cultivators did not even dare to think about challenging the Dharma Daojuan's might directly like Suzumo. However, that was not a bluff on Suzumo's part. Indeed, he was no match for the Dharma Daojun in a head-on fight. Back then, he killed the Dharma Daojun of Hellfire Hall because the latter was at the end of his lifespan and was on the verge of death. Otherwise, his Baron would not have been able to kill the latter. Right now, there were 3 Dharma Daojun in the mystic courtyard with exuberant blood chi. It was clear that they were at their peak. Suzumo's Baron had a negligible effect on the 3 Dharma Daojun. However, he had many trump cards. With the fusion of his 2 essence spirits and the help of the Mingwang prayer beads, he could break free from the Dharma Daojuan suppression for a short period of time. Even the Dharma Daojun would not be able to stop him if he released Blood Escape. Junior, you've provoked me repeatedly. Today I'll teach you a lesson. Arakatsuki Michinoku's gaze turned cold and his glabella shone. He was prepared to attack personally. Suzumo's eyes lit up, and he was about to release Blood Escape as well. Hold on. Right then, a soft shout sounded from the distant skies, interrupting the tense atmosphere in the mystic courtyard. Everyone turned to look. 3 cultivators flew over from the horizon. One of them was a middle-aged man who was relatively young. The other 2 cultivators were old men with white hair and beards. They looked like they were in their twilight years, but they were hale and hearty with rosy cheeks. It's Master! Nangongling, Yuhanyan and Ruxian's eyes lit up as they exclaimed. Among the 3 cultivators, the middle-aged man was their master, Tao Lord Scarlet Star. However, they did not recognize the 2 old men beside Tao Lord Scarlet Star. Apart from Tao Lord Scarlet Star, the 2 old men were also at the Dharma characteristic realm. Dharma Daojun of 100 Refinement Sect is here first. Seems like he's going to take Suzumo away. Fufu, how can it be that easy? Don't forget, this is the Chiguramon. If Arakatsuki Michinoku doesn't agree, the 3 Dharma Daojun want to take him away? See, this is going to be interesting. The cultivators discussed animatedly with excited expressions. In the blink of an eye, Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the 2 old men arrived in the mystic courtyard. Looking at the messy courtyard and the many broken corpses that hadn't been cleaned up in time, a trace of shock flashed through the eyes of the 3 of them. When Tao Lord Scarlet Star caught sight of Yi Tianqing's corpse, his pupils constricted. However, he calmed down before long, as though he was prepared for the scene before him. What happened next was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The crowd that was initially silent exploded instantly. Under countless gazes, Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and arrived before Suzumo. He bowed slightly and said softly, Uncle Master, I'm late. The crowd was in an uproar. Most of the cultivators present had more or less heard of Tao Lord Scarlet Star's name. Even if they had not heard of him, Tao Lord Scarlet Star was a Dharma characteristic expert after all. But now he was bowing respectfully to Jining Zhenjuan. What was going on? The cultivators at the scene were astounded. Even Nangong Ling and the other two were stunned. The three of them knew that Tao Lord Scarlet Star was unwilling to acknowledge Su Zimo as his uncle master from the bottom of his heart. Back then, he had only braced himself and agreed reluctantly to address Su Zimo as little uncle master. Furthermore, in order to protect his dignity, Su Zimo had once said that he could address him by his name if there were outsiders around. To think that Tao Lord Scarlet Star would do such a thing in front of everyone with so many major factions gathered. Nangong Ling and the other two did not see any hint of unwillingness on Tao Lord Scarlet Star's face. To be precise, when Tao Lord Scarlet Star found out about Su Zimo's true identity from Hakua Dojin, he was willing to address the latter as Uncle Master. The reason why he was respectful to Su Zimo was not because of seniority. It was because the young man before him was worthy of his respect. Chapter 968. No wonder you're so fearless. So you have helpers. Arikatsuki Michinoku had a calm expression and sneered, Scarlet Star, the three of you Dharma Dao Jun want to take someone away from me? The three of us are enough. Tao Lord Scarlet Star turned around and looked at Arikatsuki Michinoku with a calm voice. Arikatsuki Michinoku sneered again, this is Chiguramon. As long as I give the order, the three of you will have to stay here. Lass, you're too arrogant. Among the three of them, an old man with a walking stick stood out with a dignified aura. Another old man asked in a deep voice, Lass, where's your master? Arikatsuki Michinoku frowned and flicked his sleeves. Who are you guys? Do you think you can meet my master just because you want to? Elder Gu. Right then, the void reversion of ancient array sect shouted in disbelief with a shocked expression. Yes, nodding. The old man with the crutch looked at the void reversion of ancient array sect and nodded. Little monkey, it's you. It's me. The void reversion nodded and bowed hurriedly, leaning forward and bowing. This person had a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. Little monkey was his pet name and not many people knew about it. Grandpa Ge. Right then, Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect blinked her eyes and exclaimed. Tang Yu ran over and took a closer look. She could not help but laugh. Grandpa Go, it's really you. I didn't even dare to recognize you at first. Little Tang, how old are you now? Why do you still like to pretend to be a young master? Old man Go had a doting expression and chuckled as well. Grandpa Go, weren't you in seclusion? Why are you here? Tang Yu asked curiously. Old man Go retracted his smile and said indifferently, I've been in seclusion for a long time and my body is a little rusty. I came out for a walk and meet an old friend. Arikatsuki Michinoku frowned slightly. For some reason he suddenly felt uneasy. Tao Lord Scarlet Star raised his voice. Lan Yu, may I ask where Senior Shangguan is? I've said it before, my master is in seclusion. Arikatsuki Michinoku said coldly. Tao Lord Scarlet Star harumphed. Lan Yu, I came here before the tea party because I had something to discuss with Senior Shangguan. In the end you rejected me. What are your intentions? It was only at that moment that Su Zimo, Nangong Ling and the others found out that Tao Lord Scarlet Star had been to Chiguramon a few days ago. However, he didn't see the person he wanted to see and returned empty-handed. Chiguramon, I'm the patriarch. I can make all the decisions. Arikatsuki Michinoku's gaze flickered and his voice turned colder. There was already a hint of anger in his tone that could be vented at any moment. Elder Gu, who was leaning on his walking stick, said slowly, Lass, tell Shangguan that old friends of Elixir Yang sect and Ancient Array sect are here to visit her. She'll naturally come out of seclusion. Old friends? Fufu? Arikatsuki Michinoku sneered. With all due respect, I've met all of my master's old friends. However, I've never met the two of you. We've known your master for thousands of years. At that time you didn't exist yet. Elder Gu blew his beard and was getting impatient. Arikatsuki Michinoku's expression darkened completely as he said coldly, What a joke! If any random cultivator claims to be my master's old friend and wants to meet her, wouldn't my master be annoyed to death? Scarlet Star, I've tolerated you guys on account that you're from the unorthodox sections. If you guys push your luck again, don't blame me for being merciless. Arikatsuki Michinoku slapped his storage bag and tossed out a pink spirit crane that turned into a streak of light that shot into the air. A gigantic crane appeared and cried into the skies. A crisp and clear cry of a crane echoed through the entire Chiguramon. Lung Ro's expression changed. This was a signal to gather all Dharma characteristic experts of the sect. Apart from those in seclusion, everyone else could see it. Bang! 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 A series of powerful auras burst forth from every corner of the Chiguramon as figures rushed into the skies one after another. Before long, dozens of Dharma Daojun descended. All of them had unfriendly expressions and surrounded the mystic courtyard. A massive might reverberated through the entire courtyard, and many Jining Jinjuan present did not dare to speak. Who would have thought that the Thousand Crane Tea Party would develop to such a state, and even escalate to a confrontation between Dharma characteristic experts? Right now, both sides were ready to fight at any moment. Girl, what are you trying to do? Elder Gu blew his beard and glared. His anger surged as he shouted, You still want to attack us? How dare you? Shangguanzi, why aren't you coming out? Elder Gu's eyes lit up as he slammed his walking stick heavily on the ground. Rumble! Boom! Boom! Suddenly, endless beams of light burst forth from every corner of the Chiguramon and surged into the skies. The terrain of the sect was changing. The light of formation patterns? Su Zimo murmured softly. That was a sign that the formation was activated. Arikatsuki Michinoku's expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, The sect protection formation? The sect protection formation of the Chiguramon would definitely not be activated unless it was absolutely necessary. She had not expected that this inconspicuous old man before her would activate the Chiguramon sect protection formation remotely. I was the one who personally set up the Chiguramon sect protection formation. How dare you try to attack me today, girl? Elder Gu hollered with a booming voice. Dozens of Chiguramon Dharma Daojun stood in midair and exchanged glances with hesitant expressions. From the looks of it, this old man had a huge background and they did not dare to attack rashly. Even those in seclusion would be alarmed when the sect protection formation was activated. Boom! Right then, a loud bang sounded from the depths of the Chiguramon. A powerful aura burst forth. Against the envelopment of that aura, all the Dharma Daojun present were as insignificant as ants. Conjoint body mighty figure. Only someone at the conjoint body realm could release such a terrifying aura. Who's calling me? In the blink of an eye, a figure had already arrived above the mystic courtyard, as though it was one with the entire world. Nobody noticed how this person arrived. It was as though she had appeared out of thin air. It was a woman who looked even younger than Arikatsuki Michinoku. Her black hair fluttered and she was extremely beautiful. Her skin was fair and her eyes exuded a might that looked down on all living beings. Master! When Arikatsuki Michinoku saw this person, his expression changed and he bowed hurriedly. Lowering his head, his eyes were filled with endless fear. He Shangguan, you're still so young. Elder Gu laughed strangely. Shangguanzi shifted her gaze and chuckled when she caught sight of Elder Gu. After taking that step, my lifespan increased exponentially and I naturally look younger. At that point, the crowd no longer had any doubts. The person who arrived was a conjoint body mighty figure. Shangguanzi landed in the courtyard and looked at the two old men, scolding jokingly. Are you two old fogies tired of living? Why are you causing such a huge commotion at my place? Although Shangguanzi was scolding, there was a hint of joy in her eyes from reuniting with old friends. If you guys want to see me, just get Lan Yu to inform me. Why did you activate the sect protection formation? Shangguanzi shook her head with a helpless expression. Chapter 969. When he heard that, Arikatsuki Michinoku panicked. Should we inform Lanyue? Elder Gu sneered. We'll thank the heavens if she doesn't take our heads. Shangguan, your choice of patriarch isn't that great. Elder Gu pursed his lips. Shangguanzi's expression changed slightly as she narrowed her eyes and surveyed her surroundings. Gradually, she discovered something amiss. When she saw the dozens of Dharma Daojun around her, her first reaction was that these cultivators of the sect had also rushed over because of the sect protection formation. However, from the looks of it, there seemed to be more to it. Arikatsuki Michinoku's thoughts raced as he forced a smile. Master, I don't know the identities of these two seniors. Shut up. Shangguanzi interrupted Arikatsuki Michinoku, and turned to look at the two Dharma Daojun behind Arikatsuki Michinoku. She said indifferently, "The two of you, tell me everything that happened just now." The two Dharma Daojun looked hesitant and exchanged glances, seemingly troubled. Shangguanzi said slowly, "If you hide anything, you'll be punished according to the sect rules." Both of their hearts skipped a beat and they did not dare to hesitate any longer. They recounted everything that happened at the Thousand Crane Tea Party without missing out on any details. Initially, Shangguanzi even acknowledged it twice. Towards the end, she was already silent and expressionless. However, her gaze turned colder. Standing beside her, Arikatsuki Michinoku felt his heart skip a beat. This was the first time Dao Lord Scarlet Star, Elder Gu and Elder Gu heard about everything that happened at the tea party and were excited. The two old men looked at Suzimo and nodded from time to time without concealing the admiration in their eyes. Suzimo lamented internally, judging from the backgrounds of those two old men, they're probably experts from thousands of years ago. Given Dao Lord Scarlet Star's qualifications, I'm afraid he won't be able to invite them. Could it be? Not long after, the two Dharma Daojun recounted the many conflicts that had occurred at the tea party. After hearing this, Shangguanzi remained silent for a long time. The atmosphere in the arena was extremely oppressive. It was like the calm before the storm. Lanyu. After a while, Shangguanzi sighed faintly and said word by word in a cold voice, "How dare you?" Arikatsuki Michinoku's mind trembled. With a plop, he knelt on the ground with a terrified expression. He quickly said, "Master, please listen to my explanation." Shangguanzi said, "The purpose of the Thousand Crane Tea Party is to invite the nascent Soul Realm paragons of Tianhuang mainland and establish good karma with many sections. The only thing Chiguramon needs to do is to be fair. Ask yourself honestly, is there any fairness in what you've done?" Arikatsuki Michinoku trembled and was rendered speechless. Shangguanzi continued, "You sacrificed your disciple to marry a cultivator of Chaos Essence sect to obtain their support. To think that you can do something like that. You've truly given Chiguramon face." Also, Shangguanzi pointed at Suzimo and shouted, "I don't care if this child is a cultivator or a fiend demon. Chiguramon is indebted to him, so Chiguramon can't lay a hand on him. But what are you doing?" I only wanted him to stay in the sect as a guest." Arikatsuki Michinoku's voice trembled with fear. "Piak." Shangguanzi waved her hand and slapped Arikatsuki Michinoku heavily on the cheek, interrupting her. No matter what, Arikatsuki Michinoku's reputation in the cultivation world would be tarnished if she was taught a lesson in front of everyone. None of the cultivators present sympathized with her. The cultivators of Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect blamed her for not suppressing Suzimo in time. Little Fatty, Ji Chongtian and the others who were on Suzimo's side would not pity her. Lung Ro was the only one who could not bear it. She took half a step forward and raised her hand slightly, wanting to say something but hesitated. Shangguanzi shook her head. "How dare you play tricks in front of me? Seems like I was wrong about you back then." Shangguan, calm down. Elder Gu said, "We're actually here because we have good news for you." Dao Lord Scarlet Star hurried forward and handed over a letter, saying softly, "This is personally written by a senior of 100 Refinement sect." As expected. Suzimo lamented internally. As expected, this letter should have been written by Hakuya Dojin. The two old men before him should have been invited by Hakuya Dojin as well. To Shangguanzi. Shangguanzi received it casually and her gaze froze when she saw the line of words on it. This handwriting. Shangguanzi's palm trembled slightly as though she had thought of something and her mind was in turmoil. She hurriedly opened the letter and focused her gaze. The first line of words on the letter read, "Shangguan, I'm still alive and have returned." When she saw that, Shangguanzi's eyes welled up and her vision blurred. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators present, she would have lost control of her emotions and burst into tears. Many cultivators naturally noticed Shangguanzi's emotional turmoil. The crowd could not imagine what was written in the letter that could cause a conjoint body mighty figure to lose control of her emotions. Is this for real? Shangguanzi turned to look at Elder Gu and Elder Gu, still not daring to be sure. The two old men nodded. Shangguanzi took a deep breath and calmed her mind. After reading the entire letter, she carefully put it away, as if this letter was something extremely precious. Shangguanzi turned to look at Su Zimo with a gentle gaze. She did not put on any airs or pressure of a conjoint body mighty figure and asked gently, "You're Su Zimo?" "I'm Su Zimo. Greetings, senior." Su Zimo hurried forward and bowed. "Your master and I are good friends. You don't have to be so polite." Shangguanzi smiled gently and waved her sleeves gently, helping Su Zimo up. Shangguanzi said, "I heard about what happened in Myriad Phenomenon City from your master. Thank you for helping to save countless paragons and protect the final dignity of the human race." The cultivators were moved. This was a conjoint body mighty figure. They could not even be seen normally. But now this conjoint body mighty figure was thanking a Jining Zhenjuan. It was clear that the battle 100 years ago was absolutely true. Up till now, no one has dared to question your title as the #1 perfected lord. Shangguanzi said, "You're the only one qualified to drink this supreme-grade mystic tea." With that said, Shangguanzi waved her hand gently, and the only remaining tender leaf at the top of the mystic tea tree landed in the teacup. Thereafter, she poured in boiling spirit spring water, and a steaming cup of fragrant tea was brewed. Lanyue served the tea. Shangguanzi placed the teacup in Arikatsuki Michinoku's palm, and said indifferently. Arikatsuki Michinoku's expression was extremely terrible. As a Chiguramon patriarch, she had to serve tea to a Jining Zhenjuan. This was going to be a humiliation that she would never be able to erase for the rest of her life. The crowd was envious. Who could enjoy the treatment of a conjoint body mighty figure brewing tea and being served tea by a sect master? Arikatsuki Michinoku did not dare to disobey, and received the teacup respectfully with both hands. She walked to Su Zimo expressionlessly and grit her teeth. "Please." "Thank you, patriarch." Su Zimo smiled gently and received the teacup, downing it in a single gulp. The moment Su Zimo raised his head to drink the tea, a vicious glint flashed through the depths of Arikatsuki Michinoku's eyes before disappearing quickly. Chapter 970. There was no bitterness when the supreme-grade mystic tea entered his stomach. Instead, it carried a faint sweetness and turned into a warm current that flowed through his limbs and bones, fusing into his body. Finally, the tea condensed into a ball of spirit chi that surged into his spirit platform and broke through his consciousness, wrapping around Su Zimo's 2 essence spirits. Su Zimo closed his eyes instinctively and sat on the ground. The ball of spirit chi nourished the 2 essence spirits, cleansing the impurities in the black-haired essence spirit, and refining the yin chi in the scarlet-haired yin spirit. Under the nourishment of the ball of spirit chi, the 2 essence spirits became increasingly condensed and pure, advancing towards the void reversion realm. Before leaving Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had already cultivated his 2 essence spirits to the peak of late-stage nascent soul realm with the help of the 1,000-year blood sea. Now that he had fought against many nascent soul paragons, he was on the verge of breaking through. With the help of the supreme-grade mystic tea, there were almost no obstacles and he broke through in less than half an incense's time. Everything happened naturally. Su Zimo's eyes opened and shone with a divine light. He reared his head and howled into the skies, his aura lasting for a long time. Perfected nascent soul. In 100 years, he had already cultivated from the Jindan realm to perfected nascent soul realm. That speed was terrifying. Throughout history, there were not many cultivators who could achieve such a cultivation speed. Jining Zhenjuan was more than 140 years old. Although he did not look young, Su Zimo was equivalent to a teenager if he was converted to a mortal's lifespan of 100 years. The eyes of many cultivators were filled with shock. None of them knew that Su Zimo was cultivating 2 essence spirits at the same time, and was even using his essence spirit to nurture the creation Qinglian. Otherwise, he might have already entered the void reversion realm by now. After cultivating his essence spirit to perfected nascent soul, Su Zimo could clearly sense that the dermic powers he could control had increased and become denser. Furthermore, he could already vaguely sense the barrier to the void reversion realm. The perfected nascent soul realm was only a step away from the void reversion realm. However, that step stumped countless cultivators. In fact, some cultivators were unable to break through that barrier and reach the void reversion realm in their entire lives. Breaking through to the next realm was the most difficult. It would be normal for him to cultivate for hundreds of years. For example, perfected Lord Panglan, who just now had perished in the hands of Su Zimo, had only taken half a step forward after cultivating for hundreds of years and had yet to truly break through to the void reversion realm. Congratulations! Shang Guanzi smiled. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo quickly got up and bowed. Shang Guanzi nodded and turned to look at Arakatsuki Michinoku. She said indifferently, Lan Yue, you can't absolve yourself from the blame for this 1,000-crane tea party. Your sin is unforgivable. Arakatsuki Michinoku's heart sank. Shang Guanzi's tone was extremely heavy. It could be seen that she was truly enraged. This matter was difficult to resolve. Master, this disciple knows his mistake. Arakatsuki Michinoku knelt on the ground hurriedly and admitted his mistake loudly with a terrified expression. Shang Guanzi shook her head and said sternly, as the master of a sect, you're unjust and ungrateful. If I hadn't come out of seclusion in time this time round, I can't imagine how much trouble you would have caused and how much trouble you would have implicated the sect. Arakatsuki Michinoku sprawled on the ground and trembled slightly, not daring to speak. Lan Yue, from this day forth, you're no longer the patriarch of the Chiguramon. Shang Guanzi said slowly. Yes, master. Arakatsuki Michinoku did not dare to question and said softly with his head lowered. Shang Guanzi stood quietly for a moment and took a deep breath before saying in a deep voice, according to the rules of the sect, you've caused a huge disaster, and your sins are unforgivable. You should be executed. Arakatsuki Michinoku was so frightened that he shuddered. Pausing for a moment, Shang Guanzi said, however, on account that you've followed me for many years, I'll cripple your cultivation today and expel you from the sect. You can be immortal in peace. The cultivators were moved. In just a few words, this high and mighty sect master who just now was reduced to a mortal in the blink of an eye. Everyone knew that the punishment was not severe at all. If Shang Guanzi had not come out of seclusion, Arakatsuki Michinoku would have attacked Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the other two today and detained Su Zimo. It was very likely that the Chiguramon would be doomed eternally. Master, I know my mistake. Arakatsuki Michinoku was truly frightened as he crawled to Shang Guanzi's feet and cried, Grandmaster, please show mercy. When she saw Arakatsuki Michinoku in such a state, Leng Ro could not bear it and knelt down to plead as well. No matter what, Arakatsuki Michinoku was her master after all. Shang Guanzi turned to Leng Ro and asked, You're still pleading for mercy for her despite how she treated you? Please show mercy, Grandmaster. Leng Ro pursed her lips and said. Shang Guanzi was silent for a moment before nodding. All right, I'll give you another chance. However, you can't escape punishment for what happened today. Bring Lan Yue to the law enforcement hall and punish her with 9 punishments. Thank you, Master. Thank you for your mercy, Master. Arakatsuki Michinoku kowtowed hurriedly as though he had been pardoned. Although she would be punished, she would at least be able to preserve her cultivation and have a chance to make a comeback. The two Dharma Daojun stood out and helped Arakatsuki Michinoku up, heading towards the depths of the Chiguramon. Shang Guanzi turned to look at Leng Ro and the coldness in her eyes dissipated significantly. Your name is Leng Ro, right? Come under my tutelage from now on. Leng Ro was stunned. Little Fatty beamed and nudged Leng Ro hurriedly, whispering, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and acknowledge me as your master. The crowd was envious. This was a massive opportunity. If a conjoint body mighty figure took in a disciple personally, not only would her strength increase, Leng Ro's status in the Chiguramon would also rise in the future. Leng Ro knelt down and kowtowed. Greetings, Master. When he saw that, Su Zimo was happy for Leng Ro as well. Leng Ro had already done her best to plead for mercy for Arakatsuki Michinoku. Now that Senior Shangguan was willing to take her in as a disciple, it was naturally her opportunity and fortune. The tea party continued. Many cultivators fought for the ordinary mystic tea. However, compared to the shocking battle just now, the fight between the nascent soul paragons was much more ordinary. With a conjoint body mighty figure like Shangguanzi holding down the fort, the tea party went smoothly and ended by nightfall. Some cultivators bade farewell and left that night. Some cultivators rested in the Chiguramon for the night. Everyone knew that today's battle was merely the beginning. The true storm was yet to come. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan, and many void reversions of the immortal sex had died in the hands of Su Zimo. The immortal sex would definitely not let this matter rest. Furthermore, Su Zimo had returned domineeringly and killed Yi Tiancheng, declaring war on Di'in. How would Di'in react? If a few immortal sects attacked at the same time, would 100 Refinement sect be able to protect Su Zimo? Furthermore, at the end of the 1,000 Crane Tea Party, a letter attracted a conjoint body mighty figure of the Chiguramon and almost reversed the entire situation, even causing a patriarch to fall from his pedestal. Just who wrote this letter? Chapter 971. After the tea party ended, everyone dispersed. Tao Lord Scarlet Star said to Su Zimo, "Uncle Master, Grandmaster wants you to return as soon as possible." Yes, Su Zimo nodded. Hokkaido Dojin made such arrangements and instructions because he was worried about his safety after causing such a huge commotion here. Su Zimo said, "Let's head back tonight then." Little Fatty, Lung Ro and the others were naturally reluctant to part with Su Zimo after not seeing him for 100 years. After the tea party, they had nothing to do and followed Su Zimo to 100 Refinement sect. Apart from them, there were also Shangguanzi, Elder Gu and Old Man Gu. Shangguanzi summoned a white cloud casually and led everyone towards 100 Refinement sect at full speed. Dao Bing Yuding took almost half a day to bring everyone from 100 Refinement sect there. But now, a conjoint body mighty figure was leading many cultivators at full speed and arrived at 100 Refinement sect in less than 10 minutes. That speed was truly frightening. When the cultivators of 100 Refinement sect returned to the sect, they were all excited and wanted nothing more than to spread everything that happened at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party to the entire sect. Su Zimo brought Lung Ro and the others back to his cave abode. Since they had not seen each other for 100 years, they naturally had a lot to say. It was probably even more so for Shangguanzi, Elder Gu and the other two since they had not seen Hokkaido Dojin for 5,000 years. After Shangguanzi and the others arrived at 100 Refinement sect, they headed straight for the 100 Refinement Great Hall with excited expressions. Su Zimo, Lung Ro, Little Fatty and the others chatted the entire night and recounted what happened to them in the past 100 years. The laughter in the cave abode never stopped. Little Fatty jumped up and down excitedly the entire night. Everyone felt as though they had returned to the time when they were at Misty Peak. Morning. Su Zimo and the others did not sleep the entire night, but they were still energetic and in high spirits. Not long after, Tao Lord Scarlet Star came to visit and asked Su Zimo to head to the 100 Refinement's Great Hall because Hokkaido Dojin wanted to see him. Su Zimo did not hesitate and followed Tao Lord Scarlet Star to the main hall. Tao Lord Scarlet Star stood guard outside and only Su Zimo walked in alone. In the depths of the hall it was stuffy and hot. After passing through a long corridor, they arrived at the innermost part of the room. Everything before them suddenly opened up. This was a domed secret room with a very large area. In the secret chamber, a ball of scorching flame was constantly spewing out from the ground to the left. On the right there was a huge spiritual pond. Countless spiritual materials and plants rose and fell within it. Celestial spirit flower, azure sunbranch, dragon phoenix lotus, Xianyuan grass, 10,000-year blood ginseng. It was full of vitality and spiritual energy. Dense mist rose and exuded a dense and majestic vitality. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. Normally, it was rare to see even a single stalk of those spirit herbs and divine herbs. Only a sect with 100 Refinement sect's foundation and strength could gather so many. Hokkaido Dojin's essence spirit stood in midair not far away. I've heard about what happened at the tea party. As for what happens next, I'll handle it. You don't have to worry. Hokkaido Dojin consoled Su Zimo. The reason why I called you here today is to let you watch the entire process of bone forging body forging. Hokkaido Dojin continued, back then I only explained it to you. I'm sure there are many things that you might not understand. Today I'll demonstrate it once. You have to remember every single detail. Su Zimo nodded. Actually, his current body could be said to be perfect and was unprecedented. Hakea Dojin said meaningfully, accept it. You might need it in the future. Suzimo nodded and accepted the storage bag. Alright, now that bone forging is over, it's body tempering. Hakea Dojin's essence spirit flashed and arrived at the glabella of the skeleton. He controlled the skeleton to enter the spiritual pool and assume a lotus position. Swoosh! An endless stream of life essence surged into the scarlet skeleton. At the same time, Hakea Dojin used his essence spirit to control dermic powers and vibrate the skeleton continuously. Splash! The sound of bone marrow flowing could be heard from within the skeleton. Marrow cleansing and blood swapping. Suzimo was extremely familiar with this scene. There was a marrow cleansing section in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. He used the sound of tigers and leopards to cleanse the marrow to create a new bloodline and ultimately achieve the goal of blood swapping. Gradually, pink flesh appeared on the scarlet skeleton. It was as thin as a cicada's wings and was almost transparent. As time passed by, the flesh on the skeleton gradually filled up. Hakea Dojin's silhouette gradually became clearer as well. In the secret chamber there was silence. At that moment, the cultivation world of the Middle Continent was in an uproar as news after news spread one after another, causing a huge uproar. However, what has he got to do with this matter? Tao Lord Immortal Sword narrowed his eyes and said sternly, previously, according to the news from the disciples of Sword Sect, that monster incarnate Suzimo returned and cultivated an extremely terrifying sword art. Even top paragons of Sword Sect like Jian Wuzong and Hang Qiuyu were nearly killed by that sword art. When Tao Lord Immortal Sword saw that the two of them were still confused, he pondered for a moment before saying in a deep voice, now that things have come to this, there are some things that I won't hide anymore. Back then, the treasure that I asked the two of you to help me fight for in Thousand Demon Valley was actually a sword art. It's one of the 3 ancient sword arts. Fairy Snowflake and Tao Lord Cloud Rain's expressions changed slightly as they exclaimed. The 3 ancient sword arts were way too famous. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said hatefully, as I expected, that sword art should have landed in the hands of Suzimo. I've got it. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was enlightened. You're saying that the one who fought against us in Thousand Demon Valley back then was actually Suzimo's body and Hakea Dojin's essence spirit. That's right. Tao Lord Immortal Sword nodded. My demon sealing diagram was not suppressed by that person's dermic powers. Instead, it was stunned by the aura of Suzimo's divine phoenix bone. That's why I was able to obtain it so easily. That junior sure is gutsy. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression was cold, and he did not conceal the killing intent in his eyes. His clone was destroyed and he returned empty-handed. He even lost quite a number of treasures to invite Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowflake. All the resentment that he had accumulated over the past few days was vented on Suzimo. Why? Are you prepared to settle scores with that lad? Tao Lord Cloud Rain raised his brow and asked with a fake smile. Tao Lord Immortal Sword harumphed and said coldly, I've already said that if I find out that person's identity, I'll kill him even if he's Acheron. You've got to move quickly then. Tao Lord Cloud Rain smiled gently. After the 1,000 Crane Tea Party this time round, that lad has caused a huge disaster. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan and many other void reversions are dead. Those immortal sects will definitely make a move. Hakea Dojin? 100 Refinement Sect? Tao Lord Immortal Sword sneered. I'll pay a visit personally and see what 100 Refinement Sect's attitude is. I don't believe that 100 Refinement Sect can withstand the pressure of so many super sects. Brother Cloud Rain, why don't you travel with me? Tao Lord Immortal Sword turned and asked with a sincere expression. Tao Lord Cloud Rain knew that Tao Lord Immortal Sword was only inviting him to make use of his influence. However, he did not reject it. He was not interested in Suzimo. However, after 5,000 years, he wanted to see how Hakea Dojin, the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking who suppressed him back then, was doing now. Snowflake, if you have nothing on, why don't you come with us? Tao Lord Immortal Sword invited Fairy Snowflake again. Sure, Fairy Snowflake nodded and said indifferently, however, I'm not going this time round to help you. I'm just curious about Suzimo and Hakea Dojin. There's no time to lose. Let's move out now. Tao Lord Immortal's sword soared into the air and headed out of the cave abode. The moment he arrived outside the cave abode, a sword beam sped over from afar and descended before Tao Lord Immortal's sword. It was a woman with a fluttering white dress and a sword on her back. She was extremely beautiful and had a heroic aura. It was the Dharma characteristic expert of sword sect, Qin Pian Ran. Senior brother, Dao Bing Han Jian of our sect died at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. Master wants me to head to 100 Refinement sect and demand the true culprit. As Qin Pian Ran spoke, she looked at Fairy Snowflake with some hostility in her eyes. Dao Lord Immortal's sword said indifferently, "We're about to go together. You should come as well." The four of them were speechless. They summoned their dermic weapons and sped into the distance, disappearing from the skies above Sword Sect before long. At the same time, Dharma Dao Jun of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Chaos Essence Sect and Zephyr Thunder Palace appeared and rushed towards 100 Refinement Sect with a murderous aura. The other sects and factions were moving as well. A storm was brewing in the Middle Continent. Chapter 973. 100 Refinement Sect. Hake Dojin's bone-tempering body was already nearing the end, and there was no longer any danger. The only thing he had to do was wait. Su Zimo retreated silently. Outside the hall, not only were Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the other 100 Refinement Sect cultivators guarding, Elder Gu had even set up an array formation personally to prevent any unforeseen events. Su Zimo looked over although he could not see anything. However, he could vaguely sense that there were other experts in the corners of the hall. In fact, there might even be conjoint body mighty figures guarding in secret. Everyone was waiting for Hake Dojin's rebirth. Actually, Su Zimo was already prepared to leave after killing a few people at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. He did not want to implicate 100 Refinement Sect. It was the same as before when he did not return to Misty Peak because he did not want to implicate Misty Peak. However, Hake Dojin still kept him. Patriarch, Dao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain is here to visit. Before long, 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sent a message. Let him rest in the front hall. Dao Lord White Flames was already prepared and instructed. Tyrant Emperor Mountain was one of the 108 upper sects and its status in the cultivation world was even lower than the four unorthodox groups. As the Patriarch of 100 Refinement Sect, he naturally would not receive them personally. Fufu. Seems like some upper sects can't sit still and want to take advantage of the situation. Dao Lord Scarlet Star sneered. A moment later, another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sped over and said in a deep voice, Patriarch, Dao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements Sect is here to visit. Yes, arrange for them to be in the front hall. Dao Lord White Flames nodded. Before long, another 100 Refinement Sect cultivator sent a message. Patriarch, Dao Lord Firecloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace is here to visit. Dao Lord White Flames, Dao Lord Scarlet Star and the others were shocked. It was finally here. Dharma Dao Jun of the 9 Immortal Sects had appeared with ill intentions. Patriarch, Dao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect is here to visit. Patriarch, Dao Lord Cloud Son of Chaos Essence Sect is here. Monk Kong, one of the Formless Temple, is here to visit. Monk Liao Ming of Sanskrit Temple pays a visit. As the master of a sect, Dao Lord White Flames was able to maintain his composure when he heard about the arrival of super sects one after another. Patriarch, Dao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift, and Dao Lord Cloud Rain have come together. Another piece of news came. Finally, the look on Dao Lord White Flame's face changed. Although the Dharma Dao Jun from before were also very famous, compared to these three they were far inferior. Dao Lord Cloud Rain, second on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. Fairy Snowflake, number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking 2,000 years ago. Dao Lord Immortal Sword, number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, the three of them were titular disciples of Cloud Rain Sect, Snowdrift Valley and Sword Sect respectively. It's easy to explain why Dao Lord Immortal Sword is here. But why are Fairy Snowdrift and Dao Lord Cloud Rain here? Dao Lord Scarlet Star frowned. Dao Lord White Flames turned to everyone and cupped his fists. I've got to go deal with it. Everyone please wait here. Don't show yourself first. Wait for news from Granduncle Master Extreme Fire. Before Tao Lord White Flames left, he reminded Su Zimo. I'll go with you too. With that, Tao Lord Scarlet Star sped away with Tao Lord White Flames. Front Hall. The hall was extremely spacious and was made purely of metal. It had a metallic texture and looked indestructible and unshakable. There were already many cultivators seated in the hall. Every single one of them had powerful auras and a wanton might. The disciples of 100 Refinement sect who came to serve tea were all terrified, afraid of offending these important figures. Nangongling, Yu Hanyan and Ru Xian were in the hall. The Dharma Dao Jun who came had already taken their seats. Tao Lord Immortal Sword, Fairy Snowdrift and Tao Lord Cloud Rain sat at the highest positions. Although Cloud Rain sect was a fiend sect, none of the Dharma Dao Jun present dared to provoke Tao Lord Cloud Rain. In the cultivation world, strength reigned supreme. Since many Dharma Dao Jun were gathered here, there was naturally no lack of pleasantries. Of course, everyone knew why they were here. After exchanging pleasantries, they fell silent. All of them had dark and angry expressions. The atmosphere in the hall was a little tense. Piak! Suddenly, Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain slammed his heavy palm on the metal table with a loud bang. Ru Xian, who had just served tea, was shocked and failed to hold the teacup. With a crack, it fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. What are you guys doing, 100 Refinement sect? Tao Lord Red Tiger was born with a stocky build and tempered his body year-round. He looked extremely tall and muscular with eyes that resembled a pair of copper bells. He glared at Ru Xian beside him and roared with a ferocious aura. There are so many Dharma Dao Jun here to visit and 100 Refinement sect only sent a few brats to deal with us? Is this how 100 Refinement sect treats its guests? Tao Lord Red Tiger's voice was like a bell, causing Ru Xian's ears to buzz and she was already feeling dizzy. Nangongling and Yu Hanyan endured their discomfort and hurried forward to pull Ru Xian back. Don't you find it embarrassing to bully juniors? A cold laugh sounded from outside as Tao Lord Scarlet Star walked in. When he saw that his disciple was bullied by the Dharma Dao Jun, he was naturally enraged and his tone was merciless. If that wasn't the case, who knows how long you guys from 100 Refinement sect would have to hide? Tao Lord Red Tiger chuckled. Tao Lord Heaven Sea of 5 Elements sect said in an eccentric manner as well, that's right. If 100 Refinement sect hides, there's nothing we can do. Heaven Sea Red Tiger, this is 100 Refinement sect. Watch your words. Tao Lord White Flame said coldly. How impressive, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace said slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. No wonder 100 Refinement sect dares to risk universal condemnation and take in a fiend demon. I wonder what you're talking about, fellow Taoist Fire Cloud. Tao Lord White Flame said indifferently. Stop pretending. Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper sect stood up slowly. White Flames, hand over Su Zimo and 100 Refinement sect might be able to retain its position as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Otherwise, 100 Refinement sect will be destroyed. Umitba, Monk Kong one of Formless Monastery pressed his palms together and lowered his gaze, saying softly, Patron White Flames, we Buddhists have never been willing to fight with others. However, Su Zimo is definitely not a good person. He massacred the paragons of the human race wantonly and even took the utmost treasure of the Buddhist monasteries, Creation Qinglian, for his own. He deserves to die. Tao Lord White Flame sneered. Monk Kong one, aren't you being unreasonable? In Myriad Phenomenon City, Su Zimo obtained the recognition of the human emperor and fairy Ling Long. He resolved the catastrophe of the paragons single-handedly, and is definitely a human. Furthermore, Creation Qinglian is a treasure given to him by Enigma Palace. What has it got to do with the Buddhist monasteries? White Flames. Right then Tao Lord Immortal Sword suddenly spoke. Instantly the hall fell silent. No one dared to underestimate this Tao Lord, who was the number 1 on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Hand him over. 100 Refinement sect won't be able to protect him. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, in other words, I'm going to barge into 100 Refinement sect right now to take him away. Who dares to stop me? Who can stop me? Although his words were extremely domineering, no one dared to question them. Given Tao Lord Immortal Sword's combat strength, he could most likely fight against conjoint body mighty figures. If Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Fairy Snowdrift were to join forces with him, his combat strength would be terrifying, and even if 100 Refinement Sect could withstand it, they would be severely injured. Furthermore, Tao Lord Immortal Sword was the titular disciple of Sword Sect, and the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 100 Refinement Sect would not dare to kill him. If you dare barge into 100 Refinement Sect, I'll kill you. At this moment, a cold voice came from outside the door. It was loud and clear. If Hakuidojin had not said it personally, none of the cultivators present would have imagined that this delicate scholar before them was the infamous number 1 perfected lord. Was this scholar a demon? The gazes of the Tao Lords landed on Suzimo once more as they scanned him. Everyone frowned slightly. They could not sense any aura of demons from Suzimo. Or rather, even Dharma Daojun who was present could not see through Suzimo. Of course, the reason why the Tao Lords were shocked was not because they were afraid of Suzimo's strength. It was because in their eyes, Suzimo was a massive treasure trove. In name, many immortal sects were here to seek revenge under the banner of slaying demons and fiends. However, in reality, the Tao Lords were more concerned about how to split the treasures on Suzimo. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was concerned about the heaven-slaying sword art. The 2 monks of the Buddhist monasteries were concerned about Qinglian, and lost secret skills such as the Daming True Sutra. Tao Lord Firecloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace wanted to snatch Suzimo's Purple Thunder Manual. There was also the legendary Divine Phoenix Bone. You're Suzimo? Tao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain grinned and suddenly attacked without warning, roaring, "If you dare to cripple a paragon of Tyrant Emperor Mountain, I'll cripple you." Among the Dharma Daojun present, only Tao Lord Cloud Rain and Extreme Fire were experts of the same generation. The others did not have a strong impression of Hakuidojin, and were not afraid of him either. Suzimo had only disappeared for 100 years, and countless paragons of the younger generation were already looking down on him and doubting him. Furthermore, Hakuidojin had been missing for 5,000 years. Of course, the Dharma Daojun present were all monsters that had cultivated for thousands of years. None of them were fools. Although Tao Lord Red Tiger seemed reckless and ignored Hakuidojin, in reality, his actions were also to test Hakuidojin's attitude. If Hakuidojin's attitude was firm and decisive, he would be able to test Hakuidojin's strength with a single clash. Swoosh! Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist carried a suffocating domineering power as dermic power surged and arrived with a bang. Hakuidojin glanced sideways and 2 balls of flame seemed to blaze in his eyes. Hakuidojin paused in his tracks and flicked his sleeves, channeling boundless dermic powers towards Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Boom! When Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist collided with the seemingly soft Taoist robes, a deafening bang burst forth. Tao Lord Red Tiger's expression changed. That simple collision was enough to test that Hakuidojin's strength was far above his. Fufu Tao Lord, you truly live up to your reputation. Tao Lord Red Tiger let out a dry laugh and was about to leave. You still want to leave? Hakuidojin sneered. Suddenly, a gigantic palm reached out from beneath his wide sleeves and gripped Tao Lord Red Tiger's fist. Chapter 975. Tao Lord Red Tiger released his aura and channeled his dermic powers. However, he could not extinguish the flames on his arm no matter what. The crimson flame grew stronger and burned fiercely, as if it was going to engulf his entire body. Extreme fire you! Tao Lord Red Tiger widened his blood-red eyes in rage. He didn't expect that Hakuidojin would react so violently when he was just testing the waters. He had already lost one of his arms. He had yet to reach the conjoint body realm and could not regrow his limbs. A crippled arm had a huge impact on Tao Lord Red Tiger, who specialized in body tempering and melee combat. His combat strength was reduced by at least 30%. What was even more frightening was that the flame was still burning. Rumble! Tao Lord Red Tiger's body blurred. An illusory figure rushed out from behind him. Its body was huge, reaching 50 feet tall, and it instantly broke through the roof of the main hall. Its entire body exuded a domineering and powerful aura, and its every move could cause the heaven and earth to tremble. Cosmic form. The heaven and earth Dharma form was the Dharma Daojuan's most powerful technique. It was also because of this that this realm was called the Transcendence Realm. Generally speaking, cultivators would not use their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics unless it was absolutely necessary. Be it nascent soul or void reversion realm cultivators, they would release dharmic arts using dharmic arts and essence spirits to channel the power of heaven and earth. Once a cultivator stepped into the Dharma characteristic realm, their essence spirit would rise to a whole new level. They would be able to communicate with heaven and earth and merge their bodies with heaven and earth to achieve Dharma resonance. They would then be able to form a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Even after reaching the Dharma characteristic realm, the bodies of most cultivators were still incomparable to that of demons. However, a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could fight against demons in close combat. In essence, the cosmic form was also a type of spell. However, the existence of a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic allowed one to utilize the power of heaven and earth directly without the need for dharmic arts or dharmic arts. It was even more violent and direct. Of course, there were strong and weak heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. The powerful heaven and earth Dharma form could overturn rivers and seas with a single punch. A single stomp could cause mountains to crumble and the earth to crack. The larger the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, the more heaven and earth powers it could mobilize, and the more powerful it would be. Under normal circumstances, being able to condense a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 50 feet tall was already considered outstanding. If he could condense a Dharma idol that was 6 feet tall, he would definitely be called a prodigy. The famous 10 feet 6 golden body of the Diamond Temple was a heaven and earth Dharma form that was 60 feet tall. If he could form a cosmic form that was 7 feet tall, he would be a peerless genius that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Who knew how many opportunities and great fortunes were required to create such a person? Once an 80 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma idol was condensed, one could be called a monster. Naturally, it would be easy for him to sweep through those of the same level. In history, the first place of the Dharma characteristic ranking had almost always had a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 80 feet tall. Of course, according to the old legends, the highest level of cosmic form was 90 feet. 9 was the extreme number. To be able to cultivate a 90-foot tall Dharma idol was something that only appeared once in 10,000 years. He could be called a peerless monster. Not only did it depend on the cultivator's bloodline, luck, talent, physique, or the cultivation of the sect, there were many other factors, including the environment of the entire cultivation world. In ancient times, in order to escape the fate of being enslaved, the human race rose against the trend. This was a glorious era that belonged to the human race. Under such circumstances, countless heaven's favorites emerged. Among them, there was no lack of existences who had cultivated to a height of 90 feet. Almost all of those existences who did not die in battle were conferred emperors. Without that environment, without the pressure of life and death and many powerful and terrifying enemies, it would be difficult for the human race to produce such peerless monster incarnates. Right now, it was already rather rare for Dao Lord Red Tiger of Tyrant Emperor Mountain to be able to condense a heaven and earth Dharma idol that was more than 50 feet tall. Its power was shocking as well. Its massive body smashed through the metal roof of the entire hall and countless fragments fell, causing the hall to be in chaos. In the hall, Nangong Ling and the other cultivators with lower cultivation retreated and hid at the side. Only the Dao Lords could maintain their composure. Everyone frowned slightly. To be able to force Dao Lord Red Tiger to this extent and even release his heaven and earth Dharma idol, it was clear how terrifying that scarlet flame was. Extinguish! After releasing his heaven and earth Dharma idol, the flames on Dao Lord Red Tiger's body were suppressed and flickered, showing signs of extinguishing. Humph! Hakea Dojin harumphed coldly and tapped with his fingertip, releasing a red light that entered the flames. Swoosh! The flames shone brightly and burned the skies. The flames were so intense that they engulfed Dao Lord Red Tiger's heaven and earth Dharma idol and burned furiously. Scarlet flames burst forth from the billowing smoke. Roar! The heaven and earth Dharma idol that was more than 50 feet tall struggled in the flames and waved its arms. However, it could not extinguish the flames on its body. Ah! Tao Lord Red Tiger could not escape either and was burned by the flames. His flesh and blood turned into ashes and his bones were burned red and almost transparent. Even his essence spirit could not escape from the raging flames. At that moment, his essence spirit was about to be burned into nothingness once it left his body. Extreme fire, you are ruthless. Tao Lord Red Tiger's hoarse voice sounded from the flames. According to his original plan, he would test the waters himself. Even if he was no match for the other party, he would just lower his head and admit defeat before retreating. However, he did not expect that Hakke Dojin would not give him the chance at all. Less than that, he did not expect Hakke Dojin to be so strong and possess such terrifying combat strength. Even his heaven and earth Dharma idol could not defend against the flames released by Hakke Dojin. All of the Tao Lords stared at the blazing light with various looks on their faces, but none of them said anything. For example, Tao Lord Breaking Skies of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the others did not have much of an impression of Hakke Dojin initially. However, after this exchange, everyone's impression of Hakke Dojin gradually became clearer. Domineering and decisive. No matter what, Tao Lord Red Tiger was a Tao Lord of Tyrant Emperor Mountain after all and was not a nobody. Now that he was killed by extreme fire, it proved one thing. Hakke Dojin wanted to protect Su Zimo. He did not hesitate to kill a Dharma Dao Jun and offend an upper sect like Tyrant Emperor Mountain. At the same time, not far from 100 Refinement Sect, cultivators with powerful auras stood in midair. They were all Dharma Dao Jun and were looking over. Among those cultivators, some were from one of the 108 upper sects, some were itinerant cultivators and some were from immortal sects like Soaring Feather Sect. When the Dharma Dao Jun saw the heaven and earth Dharma idol that was burning with flames and roaring in pain in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Seems like extreme fire has returned. From the looks of it, he's clearly not weaker than back then. Everyone, let's go. Since extreme fire has returned, all of us old friends have to congratulate him no matter what. The reason why the Dharma Dao Jun did not enter 100 Refinement Sect was because they were observing. If the rumors were true and Hakke Dojin did not die and return domineeringly, they would pay him a congratulatory visit. 5,000 years ago, Hakke Dojin was way too famous. Coupled with his movement technique as a weapon refinement grandmaster, his influence was even greater than that of many conjoint body mighty figures. If extreme fire did not return or if his methods were not as strong as before, they would not appear lest they incur the wrath of Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sections. In the distant horizon, a black-robed cultivator flew over with a cold expression. He carried a blood-red saber on his shoulder and was filled with killing intent. The person looked in the direction of 100 Refinement Sect and murmured softly, "Thankfully, I'm not too late." Chapter 976. 100 Refinement Sect. In the front hall. In less than 3 breaths, the 50 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was burned into nothingness and its dharmic powers dissipated. Without the support of the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, Tao Lord Red Tiger could not defend against the burning of the scarlet flames, and was engulfed by the flames in the blink of an eye. Ah! 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 Tao Lord Red Tiger screamed repeatedly and his voice was inaudible towards the end. Right in front of everyone, a Dharma Dao Jun was burned to ashes just like that. Not even his bones were left. Some of the Dharma Dao Jun who were initially eager to give it a try fell silent as well. In the hall, the only ones who could maintain their composure were the Dharma Dao Jun of the super sects. In a sense, this was the first time Su Zimo saw Hakke Dojin attack. The previous 2 times, Hakke Dojin was only an essence spirit without a physical body, and could not release such dharmic arts. Su Zimo realized that Hakke Dojin's strength seemed to be even more terrifying than he had imagined. The 50 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could not defend against Hakke Dojin's dharmic art. After killing a Dharma Dao Jun, Hakke Dojin led Su Zimo past many Dao Lords and sat down on the main seat, as though nothing had happened. Su Zimo followed behind him. Along the way, not a single Dharma Dao Jun dared to attack. Good. When Dao Lord Cloud Rain saw that, he clapped and cheered repeatedly, saying mockingly, As expected of extreme fire. You're still as impressive as back then. Hakuya Dojin said indifferently. 5,000 years have passed and you're still the same. You haven't improved at all. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was not annoyed and said leisurely, extreme fire, 5,000 years have passed and you're still at the Dharma characteristic realm. You haven't improved either. Moreover, I heard that you even lost your physical body. Looks like you're not doing well. Hakuya Dojin, although your physical body has recovered, how much of your combat strength can you recover? Back then you were indeed a top-tier expert. Now, heh. Tao Lord Fire Cloud of Zephyr Thunder Palace chuckled coldly. Normally speaking, after losing one's original physical body, regardless of whether it was possession or a new Dharma characteristic physical body, it would be very difficult to achieve 100% compatibility with one's primordial spirit. Thus, one's combat strength would definitely decrease. However, Hakuya Dojin had personally forged his bones and cast his body in order to avoid such a situation. Moreover, his choices were all top-notch spiritual materials. Now, this body had already resonated with his essence soul, and the compatibility was almost 100%. As long as he continued cultivating for a period of time, his essence spirit and body would fuse perfectly. Hakuya Dojin's gaze shifted and landed on Tao Lord Fire Cloud. It was as though two flames were bursting forth as he said slowly, if you want to know, you can give it a try. Tao Lord Fire Cloud's heart skipped a beat. He felt his heart skip a beat when he was glared at by Hakuya Dojin and retracted his actions of getting up. He did not want to become the second Tao Lord Red Tiger. Hakuya Dojin looked at Fairy Snowdrift and raised his brow, asking why? Snowdrift Valley wants to interfere as well? It's a misunderstanding. Fairy Snowdrift smiled indifferently. I'm only here because of your reputation. Firstly, I want to see the Hakuya Dojin from 5,000 years ago. Secondly, I want to see the #1 perfected lord of the current era. Fairy Snowdrift's intention was to remain neutral. With that said, her beautiful eyes shimmered as she looked towards Suzimo, who was behind Hakuya Dojin. Suzimo had an indifferent expression and did not bat an eyelid. Even though there were many Dharma Daojun present and their auras were terrifying, he was still able to remain calm. You live up to your reputation. Fairy Snowdrift smiled gently. No one knew if she was referring to Hakuya Dojin or Suzimo. Unknowingly, Hakuya Dojin had already gained control of the entire situation. At that moment, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the other two were the only ones in the hall who could ensure that their auras did not dissipate against Hakuya Dojin's powerful aura. There was a hidden sharpness to Tao Lord Immortal Sword's body the entire time. Tao Lord Cloud Rain waved his folding fan gently and mist filled the air. Fairy Snowdrift's surroundings were cold as ice. For example, Tao Lord Fire Cloud and the others of Zephyr Thunder Palace were suppressed. Clang! 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 Tao Lord Immortal Sword tapped his fingers on the metal table slowly and let out the sound of metal clashing in a rhythmic manner. With each tap, the sharpness on his body would increase by a notch. After a few taps, the sharpness on Tao Lord Immortal Sword's body had already surged into the skies, slicing Hakuya Dojin's aura into two. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, extreme fire. It's important to know one's limits. If you want to protect this lad, don't drag the entire 100 Refinement sect down with you. Why? You want to make a move in 100 Refinement sect as well? Hakuya Dojin's gaze narrowed with killing intent. It's not just me. Tao Lord Immortal Sword stood up slowly like an unsheathed sword with a sharp edge as he said coldly, it's Dharma Daojun of our immortal sects who is here to ask for him. Are you going to hand him over or not? Patron Extreme Fire because of a Fiend Demon 100 Refinement sect, Sword sect, Chaos Essence sect, Heavenly Dipper sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and our two monasteries are on bad terms. You have to consider carefully. Monk Kong, one of Formless Monastery, persuaded. Extreme Fire. Tao Lord Cloud Rain stood out as well with a faint smile. If you want to go against the bigger picture, you'll only bring destruction. Extreme Fire, hand him over. Hand him over. Tao Lord Fire Cloud, Tao Lord Breaking Skies and Tao Lord Cloud Sun stood out one after another. The 4 immortal sects and 2 monasteries were attacking at the same time. There was probably no faction in Tianhuang mainland that could withstand such pressure, let alone the 4 unorthodox groups. Send the order. Hakuya Dojin stood up as well and said slowly, expressionlessly, "Whoever dares to make a move in 100 Refinement Sect will be killed without mercy. How dare you?" Dao Lord Firecloud's gaze turned cold as he grit his teeth. 100 Refinement Sect has already declined. If we die here, 100 Refinement Sect won't be able to bear the responsibility. Try moving and see if I dare to kill you. Hakuya Dojin's gaze was scorching and the flames in his eyes seemed to be burning. Both sides were on the verge of breaking out into a huge battle. Dao Lord Immortal's sword and the others did not dare to act rashly either. Hakuya Dojin's methods and boldness were even stronger than they had imagined. Even the 4 immortal sects and 2 Buddhist monasteries could not suppress him. They were worried that if they attacked, Hakuya Dojin would truly disregard everything and kill them. However, Hakuya Dojin had reservations as well. Dao Lord Immortal's sword and the others were different from Dao Lord Red Tiger. Dao Lord Red Tiger came from Tyrant Emperor Mountain, one of the upper sections. If he dared to make a move in 100 Refinement Sect, so be it. However, each of these people before him had a greater background than the other. If he really killed these people here, 100 Refinement Sect would probably be in trouble. Right then, the voice of 100 Refinement Sect disciples sounded from outside. "Patriarch, Dao Lord Li Ling is here to visit." Many Dao Lords were shocked when they heard that voice. This was an itinerant cultivator who traveled alone. However, his combat strength was extremely terrifying, and he was ranked 10th on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. That person isn't dead yet? Dao Lord Cloud Rain frowned. "Ha ha ha, Extreme Fire, I heard that you're still alive. I'm here to visit you." A cultivator walked in from outside. He was tall and slender with long hair that draped over his shoulders. He was slovenly and had a lazy expression as he laughed. "Patriarch, Dao Lord Essence Dragon is here to greet you." "Patriarch, Dao Lord Blue Flame is here to greet you." "Patriarch, Dao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect is here to greet you." Chapter 977. Soaring Feather Sect, one of the 9 immortal sects. Dao Lord Divine Moon was also a Dao Lord from thousands of years ago, and made a name for himself early on. "Extreme Fire, how have you been?" The moment Dao Lord Divine Moon entered the hall, he cupped his fists and smiled at Hakuya Dojin. At this point, the Dao Lords of the 6 major immortal sects of the Middle Continent were all present. Dharma Dao Jun, Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others who entered earlier could be ignored. But now, even Dao Lord Divine Moon of Soaring Feather Sect had come to congratulate Extreme Fire. Everyone had no choice but to re-evaluate 100 Refinement Sect's status in the cultivation world. Or rather, they had to re-evaluate Hakuya Dojin's status. All the Dao Lords had arrived to congratulate him. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect was invigorated. Normally speaking, at least half of the weapons in the cultivation world came from 100 Refinement Sect. 20% of the remaining half came from the foundations of the various major sections. 20% came from ruins, cave abodes, secret realms and inheritance grounds. The remaining 10% came from other weapon refinement sections. As the number 1 weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 Refinement Sect, Hakuya Dojin's status and influence in the cultivation world was imaginable. There were very few Mahayana realm experts among the 4 unorthodox groups. That was because every cultivator had a limited amount of mental energy. If they had any accomplishments in unorthodox methods such as weapon refinement, their cultivation would definitely be delayed. In the history of 100 Refinement Sect, Hakuya Dojin was one of the few people who had reached the peak of weapon refinement and cultivation. He was also a monster incarnate that countless seniors of the sect had high hopes for and believed could enter the Mahayana realm. That was also the reason why Hakuya Dojin's return caused the entire 100 Refinement Sect to operate, and even conjoint body mighty figures were willing to obey him. "Men, take a seat." When he saw his old friends come to congratulate him, a smile finally appeared on Hakuya Dojin's face as he instructed. Dharma Dao Jun came to congratulate him one after another. It was a shocking scene that even Dao Lord Immortal Sword could not have such an impact. The expressions of Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the others darkened. In this way, it was even more unrealistic for them to make a move. At least, with their status, It was almost impossible for them to get Suzimo out of Hakuya Dojin's hands. Right then, 100 Refinement Sect cultivator walked in hurriedly with a bewildered expression. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Tao Lord Shura of the Fiend Sects is outside. Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Hakuya Dojin both frowned. The two of them looked at each other without saying a word. Neither party knew why the demon cult Shura came to visit them. Shura, what is he doing here? Tao Lord Cloud Rain frowned deeply. As a member of the demon sect, he had a relatively better understanding of the demon sect. Shura was the most terrifying monster in the evil cult in recent years. He was bloodthirsty, eccentric, and had no scruples when he did things. It was said that this person had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm a few decades ago. On Tao Lord Immortal Sword's side, apart from Tao Lord Cloudrain who was from the Fiend Sects, the other Tao Lords did not have much interaction with this generation's Shura. As for Hakuya Dojin, he was an expert from 5,000 years ago and did not know Shura at all. Suzimo was the only one whose heart skipped a beat as a strange glint flashed through his eyes. Shura? Could it be Yin Beichen? If it was Yin Beichen, there was a high chance that he was here to help him. Shura sect was in the Middle Continent and it was only logical for Shura to know about the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Just as Suzimo was about to send a voice transmission, Hakuya Dojin said slowly, Invite him in. In Hakuya Dojin's heart, no matter which side this person was on, he would be able to handle it. Not long after, a black-robed man walked in with a cold expression. His face was sharp and he wielded a long saber that was filled with blood chi. There were streaks of blood around the saber that resembled blood vessels. It was as though fresh blood was flowing within and the stench of blood filled the air. Suzimo's eyes lit up. It was indeed Shura Yin Beichen. Just as he was about to speak, Yin Beichen's gaze swept past his eyes casually. His gaze was unfamiliar and did not pause at all, as though the two of them had never met before. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat and he did not take the initiative to greet him. Although he was puzzled, he believed that Yin Beichen's actions must have a deeper meaning. Shura, what are you doing here? Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked with a frown. If you can come, why can't I? Yin Beichen swept his gaze and asked indifferently. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's expression darkened as he harumphed and did not continue asking. You're a guest. Take a seat. Hakuya Dojin waved his hand and said. 100 Refinement Sect cultivator moved a chair in fear and placed it in front of Yin Beichen. With a terrified expression, he turned and left hurriedly. Yin Beichen did not thank him and sat down right away. The blood-colored saber in his hands was placed horizontally on his knees and his eyes were half closed, as though he was asleep. Nobody knew why he was here. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's gaze flickered as he suddenly said, Extreme fire. Now that things have come to this, both of us will only suffer if we fight. I have a suggestion. Oh. Hakuya Dojin raised his brow. The two of us did not have enough fun the previous time we fought. Why don't we make use of this opportunity to fight? Tao Lord Immortal Sword took the initiative to challenge. He said that to remind Hakuya Dojin. After the battle at Thousand Demon Valley, he already knew that Suzimo was the one who snatched the heaven-slaying sword art. Tao Lord Immortal Sword knew that the heaven-slaying sword art was with Suzimo this time round, and would definitely not return empty-handed. However, this was 100 Refinement Sect. If both sides were to fight, he might not be able to gain an advantage. However, he was absolutely confident in his combat strength. If he could make use of this battle to suppress Hakuya Dojin, he could use Hakuya Dojin to exchange for Suzimo. You want to fight me? Hakuya Dojin laughed with flames burning in his eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword smiled gently and mocked, Why? The number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago is already afraid? When he heard that, Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. It was only at this moment that he truly realized Hakuya Dojin's status in the cultivation world 5,000 years ago. The number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking coupled with his status as a weapon refinement grandmaster. Even conjoint body mighty figures could not compare to his influence. I think that works. Tao Lord Cloud Rain clapped his hands. One is the number one of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago, and the other is the number 1 of the current Dharma characteristic ranking. It's rare for us to meet. Why don't we fight and broaden our horizons? Grandmaster, there's no need for us to fight. That's right. You've just reconstructed your body and are definitely not familiar with controlling and sensing it. There's no need for you to take the risk. Tao Lord Scarlet Star and the others hurriedly sent voice transmissions to persuade him. Most importantly, Hakka Dojin was extremely famous 5,000 years ago and was at his peak. However, 5,000 years had passed. For the Dharma Daojun, who had a lifespan of 10,000 years, Hakka Dojin was already in his late stages, and was definitely not a match for Tao Lord Immortal Sword at his peak. Hakka Dojin was indifferent and stood up slowly with a surging battle intent. Very good. I haven't fought for 5,000 years and was looking for an opponent. You came at the right time. Fight! Hakka Dojin hollered and dermic power surged within his body, as he conjured a scarlet spear in reverse. It was almost transparent and scorching hot, as though it had been burned for 7 days and 7 nights. Chapter 978. Swoosh! Hakka Dojin tossed in reverse and a red light flashed. In the blink of an eye, the fire spear had already arrived before Tao Lord Immortal's sword, and the surrounding air was already burning. Many Tao Lords retreated. If they were too close to a battle of this level, they would be embroiled in it. Clang! There was no way to see Tao Lord Immortal's sword's actions clearly. A chilling sword with 6 dermic patterns appeared in his hand. A Khanate Tao Lord dermic weapon. Although the fire spear was fast, Tao Lord Immortal's sword technique was even faster. After drawing his sword, he slashed. Buzz! The sword struck the tip of the spear and sliced it into pieces along the red body of the spear, producing an ear-piercing sound. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Su Zimo had witnessed Tao Lord Immortal Sword's methods. However, that was only a clone of Tao Lord Immortal Sword. Now that he was watching the battle up close, Su Zimo truly felt the terror of the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. The two of them merely exchanged a single move and the dermic powers in the entire hall seemed to have been sucked dry as the entire hall trembled. Swash! After destroying Hakka Dojin's fire spear with a single slash, Tao Lord Immortal Sword did not stop at all. In a flash he transformed into a sword beam and arrived before Hakka Dojin instantly. He knew that the Dharma Daojun was definitely not his match in melee combat. Therefore he shortened the distance right away, wanting to suppress Hakka Dojin with his supreme sword Dao. Boom! Hakka Dojin's expression was unchanged as he tapped his glabella gently with his finger. A scarlet tripod flew out and landed in front of him, blocking the incoming sword. That tripod was also a Khanate Tao Lord dermic weapon. The moment the two of them exchanged blows, they had already summoned their destiny dermic weapons. Swash! Tao Lord Immortal Sword's figure flashed once more and circled around the scarlet tripod, arriving behind Hakka Dojin. His movement technique was way too fast. Even some of the Dharma Daojun present could not see it clearly, let alone Jining Zhenjuan and void reversions. Is this the sword sex sword evasion technique? It truly lives up to its reputation. Tao Lord Immortal Sword killed many strong enemies in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking with his hand sword escape technique. No one in the same realm can match up to such a movement technique. The Dharma Daojun present today were not nobodies. They all had their own feelings about this battle. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's judgment was very accurate. He held a 3-foot-long green sword in his hand and relied on the sword escape technique to move nimbly. As for Hakka Dojin's destiny dermic weapon, it was a crimson cauldron. Although it was powerful, it was not flexible enough. Hakka Dojin didn't even turn around. He formed a seal with his hands and lightly shouted, "Disperse!" Whoosh! 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 Beside Hakka Dojin, 3 crimson flames instantly appeared and slowly revolved around him. Scarlet Flame Revolving Lantern. Su Zimo, Nangongling and the others recognized it right away. It was a dermic art from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra that could be used for both offense and defense. The moment Tao Lord Immortal Sword arrived behind Hakka Dojin, it was struck by a ball of flames. Instantly, flames ignited on the sword and its temperature rose rapidly. Destroy! Tao Lord Immortal Sword hollered and sword chi burst forth from his body, tearing through the void. All life seemed to be destroyed by the sword chi. Lifeless sword art. Sword cultivators were known for their killing. Tao Lord Immortal Sword had even pushed his killing techniques to their limits. Hake Dojin had already turned around and his eyes lit up. It crashed down with a loud bang, causing the entire ground to tremble. Heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were phantoms created by cultivators. However, when the arm was sliced down, it was as though it was corporeal. Even though it was a severed arm, it was enough to kill the Dharma Daojun, who was of average strength. Poof! Although the scarlet flame dermic body only had a single arm left, it seized the opportunity to punch through the chest of the lifeless sword body. This clash seemed like an internecine outcome. However, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression turned paler. The fist of the scarlet flame dermic body pierced the chest of the lifeless sword body, and a series of scarlet flames burst forth from the wound in a bedazzling manner. Swoosh! The flames intensified and burst forth from the chest of the lifeless sword body, engulfing his entire body from the inside out. If this kind of flame attacked from the outside, the lifeless sword body could still destroy it with its sharp and fierce sword chi. But now, those flames were burst forth from the body of the lifeless sword body. Roar! Tao Lord Immortal Sword let out a deep roar and his body trembled. His essence spirit was pushed to its limits and dermic powers were injected continuously. His heaven and earth Dharma characteristic let out a painful roar in the flames as well. Burn! Hake Dojin hollered and willed. The scarlet flame dermic body strode forward and opened its mouth, spitting out a stream of scarlet lava that landed on the lifeless sword body. Shing! The sword chi on the lifeless sword body was extinguished by the terrifying lava instantly. The lifeless sword body struggled and roared. Its eyes, ears, mouth and nostrils were all emitting raging flames and thick smoke. The flames from both inside and outside incinerated the lifeless sword body completely. When they saw that, many Tao Lords were dumbfounded and could not conceal the shock in their eyes. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was defeated. The number 1 of the current Dharma characteristic ranking had lost to the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago, who was already past his peak and in his later years. Although the scarlet flame dermic body lost an arm, it was still around and the flames on its body did not diminish. It could still release terrifying power. As for the lifeless sword body, it was completely burned into nothingness. Boom! The scarlet flame dermic body with a severed arm roared and strode forward. Its gigantic foot that was burning with flames stomped down towards Tao Lord Immortal Sword. This time it carried a supreme pressure, as if it was crushing an ant. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's face was pale as he swallowed an elixir and forcefully channeled his essence spirit. Conjuring hand seals, he conjured a gigantic sword and stabbed it towards the incoming foot. Clang! An ear-piercing sound could be heard when the sword struck the foot. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shuddered.